In 60 seconds, a mistyped number will change 2 lives forever. Emily Carter's fingers trembled as she pressed send on what she thought was her last hope, a desperate plea for help sent to the wrong person. In a basement that smelled of damp concrete and terror, she waited for salvation from a stranger. Miles away, Adrian Voss stared at his phone, reading words that would shatter the carefully constructed walls around his heart. A woman he'd never met, a message never meant for him, and a choice that would pull him into the kind of danger most people run from. This is their story. If you're still with me at the end, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The cold hit Emily first. Not the kind of cold that makes you reach for a sweater or turn up the heat. This was the type that lived in your bones, that crept through the concrete floor of the basement and settled into your spine like it belonged there. She'd stopped shivering an hour ago, which she knew wasn't a good sign. Hypothermia. Stage 2, maybe 3. Her anatomy professor would have been proud that she remembered. Fat lot of good medical school trivia did her now. Emily sat with her back pressed against the water heater, the only source of warmth in this tomb. Her wrists were raw from the zip ties she'd finally managed to cut through using an exposed screw on the furnace. It had taken 43 minutes. She knew because she'd counted every single second, focusing on the numbers to keep the panic from swallowing her whole. The farmhouse above her head was silent, except for the occasional creak of floorboards. Mark was still up there. Pacing, probably. Planning. She'd heard him on the phone earlier, his voice low and urgent, though she couldn't make out the words. That scared her more than anything else. The idea that this wasn't just some spontaneous act of violence, that he'd actually thought this through. 3 days ago, Mark Hendricks had been her study partner. The guy who always brought extra coffee to their marathon anatomy sessions. Who made terrible jokes about cadavers that somehow made the whole thing less horrible. Who'd offered to drive her home when her car broke down after a late class. She'd said yes. Of course she'd said yes. Why wouldn't she trust someone she'd spent 6 months studying alongside? That was Tuesday. Now it was Friday night, or maybe Saturday morning, she'd lost track. And Mark was no longer the harmless med student who couldn't remember the branches of the facial nerve. He was the man who'd drugged her coffee, who'd zip-tied her wrists while she was still too disoriented to fight back, who'd brought her to this abandoned farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. Emily's phone was in her jacket pocket. He'd missed it during his initial search, probably because he'd been in a hurry, probably because he was running on adrenaline and poor planning. The screen was cracked from where she'd dropped it on the concrete, but it still worked. Barely. 1 bar of signal. Intermittent, flickering in and out like a dying heartbeat. She pulled it out with numb fingers, the screen's glow painfully bright in the darkness. Her battery was at 12%. Maybe enough for one message. Maybe. The smart thing would be to call 911. That's what everyone said, right? Always call 911. But Emily had tried that already, twice, and both times the call had dropped before connecting. The signal wasn't strong enough. A text might go through where a call wouldn't. Smaller data packet, less bandwidth required. Basic telecommunications. Another random fact from a life that felt increasingly theoretical. Her contacts list swam before her eyes. Mom was in Seattle, 1,400 miles away. Her roommate Jessica was at a conference in Boston. The police, she'd already tried. That left Katie, her best friend since undergrad, the one person who'd know immediately that something was wrong, who'd call the cavalry without asking questions. Emily's fingers were shaking so badly she could barely type. The basement was perhaps 40 degrees, maybe less. Her teeth chattered as she tried to compose something that would convey the urgency without wasting characters. Help-trapped basement farmhouse RT-47 past Miller's Creek. Mark Hendricks. Has me hurry, please. She read it 3 times, making sure the critical information was there. Location. Captor. Urgency. Her finger hovered over the send button. That's when she heard the footsteps above. Heavy, deliberate, moving from the kitchen toward the basement door. Emily? Mark's voice drifted down, friendly and casual, like they were still study partners, like everything was normal. You getting cold down there? I was thinking we should talk about our situation. Our situation, like this was a relationship problem, not a kidnapping. Her thumb hit send without thinking, pure panic overriding caution. The message disappeared from her screen just as the signal bar flickered and died. Emily stared at her phone, willing the message to show as delivered. The circle just kept spinning, sending, sending, sending. "I know you're awake," Mark called down. "I can hear you moving around." She shoved the phone back in her pocket and grabbed the first thing her hand found, a wooden handle sticking out from behind the water heater. When she pulled it free, she found herself holding a garden shovel, the metal blade crusted with old dirt. Not much of a weapon. Better than nothing. The basement door creaked open. Light spilled down the wooden stairs, and Emily's eyes watered after so long in the dark. She couldn't see Mark yet, just his shadow stretching down the steps, impossibly long. "I brought you some water," he said, his tone still conversational. "And a sandwich, turkey and Swiss. Your favorite, right?" Emily's stomach turned. He'd been paying attention. All those study sessions, all those casual conversations, he'd been cataloging her preferences like data points, building a profile. "I'm not hungry," she managed, her voice hoarse from disuse and fear. "You should eat anyway. Keep your strength up. We're going to be here a while." The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, so certain, made her grip the shovel tighter. "Mark, you don't have to do this." Her words came out steadier than she felt. "Whatever this is, whatever you think is happening, we can figure it out. We can talk." His laugh was brief and bitter. Talk. Right. Like anyone ever listens. He descended 3 more steps, and now she could see him properly. He looked wrong. Not threatening exactly. That was the disturbing part. He looked like Mark. Same brown hair falling across his forehead, same wire-rimmed glasses, same slight build. The only difference was his eyes. Something vital had gone out of them, replaced by a flat determination that made her blood run cold. "I listened to you," Emily said, keeping her voice level. "All semester. Every time you talked about your research, your theories, I listened. You humored me." He took another step. "There's a difference." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Now he was halfway down the stairs, close enough that she could see he was holding a syringe in his left hand. "When I told you about my breakthrough, my discovery about neural pathway manipulation, what did you say?" Emily's mind raced, trying to remember. There'd been so many conversations, so many late nights fueled by coffee and desperation. Mark had always been intense about his research, but she'd chalked it up to passion. Now that intensity looked different, dangerous. "I said it was interesting," she tried. "You said it was ambitious." His voice hardened. "That's what people say when they think you're delusional, but they're too polite to tell you to your face." "Mark, I'm not delusional." The sudden shout echoed off the concrete walls, and Emily flinched. He caught himself, took a breath, regained that eerie calm. "I'm going to prove it. I'm going to prove all of them wrong. The professors who rejected my proposals, the review boards who called my methods questionable, everyone who said I was wasting my potential on impossible theories." The syringe caught the light as he descended another step. Emily's grip on the shovel tightened until her knuckles ached. "And I need you to help me do that," Mark continued, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. "You're perfect for this, Emily. Your neural profile, your cognitive baseline, I've been documenting it for months. All those study sessions, I was gathering data. You have exactly the kind of mind I need for the next phase." "What next phase?" But Emily already knew she didn't want the answer. "Human trials." He said it like it was obvious, like it was reasonable. "The rats were promising but limited. I need to see how the serum affects higher cognitive functions, complex reasoning, emotional processing. That's where you come in." He took another step. Only 4 remained between them. Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket, once, sharp and sudden. The message. It must have gone through. Mark's eyes narrowed. What was that? Nothing. The word came too fast, too defensive. "Empty your pockets." "No." His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. Predatory. "Emily, I don't want to make this difficult. Empty your pockets. Now." She pulled out the phone with her free hand, keeping the shovel raised with the other. The screen showed one notification. Message failed to send. The words might as well have been a death sentence. But then, as she stared at the screen, another notification appeared. Different. Message delivered. Her heart kicked against her ribs. It had gone through. But when she opened the message thread, her stomach dropped. Katie's number in her contacts was 607-555-0147. The number she'd sent the message to was 607-555-0174. She'd transposed the last two digits, 74 instead of 47. In her panic, her frozen fingers, her desperate hurry, she'd sent her only chance for rescue to a complete stranger. "Give me the phone, Emily." Mark was 3 steps away now, close enough to rush her, close enough that if she swung the shovel, she might actually connect. Before she could decide, her phone buzzed again. Incoming call from the number she'd texted. The stranger. The wrong number. Her thumb hit answer before her brain could overthink it. "Hello?" A man's voice, deep and rough. "Who is this?" Emily's voice cracked. "Please, I need help." Mark lunged down the remaining steps. Emily swung the shovel in a wild arc, connecting with his shoulder. Not hard enough to do real damage, but enough to make him stagger back. "What the hell is going on?" the voice on the phone demanded. Sharp now. Alert. "Are you in danger? Talk to me." "Yes, I'm trapped. She ducked as Mark grabbed for the phone, her shoulder slamming into the concrete wall. Pain exploded through her arm. Basement, farmhouse, Route 47 past Miller's Creek. Mark's hand closed around her wrist. The phone clattered to the floor. "Route 47, the voice on the other end said, suddenly clear in the quiet basement. The phone's speaker had activated when it hit the ground. "Past Miller's Creek. I know that area." "How far past?" Emily drove her knee up, catching Mark in the stomach. He grunted, his grip loosening just enough for her to wrench free. "Maybe 10 miles, she gasped, scrambling backward. "Old white farmhouse, collapsed barn out front. Please, you have to—" Mark kicked the phone. It skidded across the floor, disappearing into the shadows beneath the stairs. But the voice was still there, tinny and distant but audible. "I'm 15 minutes out. Can you get to a room with a lock?" "No locks," Emily panted. She'd checked. Every door in this basement had been removed from its hinges. "Then find something to barricade yourself with. Something heavy. Can you do that?" Mark was advancing again, more cautious now, favoring his left side where the shovel had connected. The syringe was still in his hand. "Who the hell is that?" he demanded. Emily didn't answer. She was scanning the basement, cataloging potential barriers. The water heater was bolted to the floor. The shelving units were empty and flimsy. The washer and dryer. "The dryer," the phone voice said, like he'd read her mind. "If there's an old dryer down there, those things weigh 300 pounds. Can you get behind it?" Emily edged toward the ancient dryer in the corner, keeping the shovel between her and Mark. "I don't know who you called," Mark said, "but they're not going to get here in time. This doesn't have to be violent, Emily. Just let me administer the serum. It's a simple injection. You'll feel some disorientation at first, maybe some minor hallucinations, but minor hallucinations?" The laugh that escaped her was slightly unhinged. "You're insane." "I'm visionary." He lunged again. This time Emily was ready. She brought the shovel down hard on his forearm. There was a sick crack, bone-meeting wood, and Mark screamed. The syringe flew from his hand, shattering against the wall. The voice from the phone. "Was that him? Are you hurt?" "I'm okay," Emily lied, backing toward the dryer. Her shoulder was screaming where she'd hit the wall, and her hands were so numb she could barely feel the shovel handle. Mark cradled his arm, his face twisted in pain and rage. "You broke it. You actually broke it." "Good," Emily spit back. "I'm 12 minutes out," the phone voice said. "Keep him talking. Can you see any weapons?" "Just this shovel." "That'll work. Keep it between you and him. Don't let him get close." Mark was breathing hard, his eyes darting between Emily and the shattered remains of the syringe. "That was 6 months of work. 6 months. Do you have any idea?" "I don't care about your work." The words tore out of her. "You kidnapped me. You drugged me. You were going to—" Her voice broke. "What were you going to do, Mark? After the serum? After your experiment?" His silence was answer enough. 10 minutes, the voice said quietly. "I'm coming. What's your name?" "Emily. Emily Carter." "Emily, I'm Adrian. I need you to stay calm and stay smart. You're doing great." Something about his tone, steady and certain and completely unafraid, cut through her panic. This stranger, this wrong number, believed she could survive this. Maybe she could. Mark was moving toward the stairs, his broken arm held against his chest. This isn't over. I have more serum upstairs. I can synthesize another batch. You can't. Stay where you are, Adrian's voice commanded, and for a bizarre moment, Emily thought he was talking to Mark. Then she realized he was establishing control, giving her instructions she could follow. Emily, if he goes upstairs, you lose your advantage. Don't let him leave that basement. But Mark was already on the third step. Emily looked at the shovel in her hands, at Mark's retreating back, at the phone line in the shadows. She threw the shovel. It wasn't a good throw. Her hands were too numb, her aim too desperate. But the handle caught Mark behind the knees and his legs buckled. He went down hard on the stairs, his head cracking against the wood. For a terrible moment, he didn't move. Then he groaned, rolling onto his side. Emily? Adrian's voice was sharp. What happened? He fell. He's not getting up. Is he conscious? I think so. He's moving. Good. I need you to get that phone and get as far from him as possible. Can you do that? Emily's legs felt like water as she crossed to where the phone lay. Her hands were shaking so badly, she nearly dropped it twice before getting a grip. I have it. Okay. Now I need you to talk to me. Keep talking so I know you're okay. Tell me about yourself. Anything. Just keep talking. It was such a strange request that Emily almost laughed. What do you want to know? What do you do? Student? Job? Medical school, 2nd year. The words felt absurd given the circumstances. Anatomy and physiology finals next week. Well, supposed to be. Mark was sitting up now on the stairs, his face pale, his arm bent at a wrong angle. He looked smaller somehow, defeated, but Emily didn't lower her guard. Medical school, Adrian repeated. That's impressive. You always want to be a doctor? It was such a normal question, such a normal conversation, except nothing about this was normal. Since I was 12, Emily heard herself say. My dad had a heart attack. The ER doctor who saved him, she made this impossible situation feel manageable, like everything would be okay because she was there. I wanted to be that for someone. 8 minutes, Adrian said. You're going to be okay, Emily. I'm coming. I promise I'm coming. Why are you doing this? The question escaped before she could stop it. I'm nobody to you. A wrong number. You could have just hung up. There was a pause. In the background, she could hear the sound of his engine, the rush of speed. Nobody deserves this, he finally said. And you're not nobody. Not to me. Not anymore. Something in his voice made her throat tighten. I don't even know your last name. Voss? Adrian Voss? The name rang a bell, distant and unclear. She'd heard it somewhere before but couldn't place where. Are you far? She tried to keep the desperation out of her voice. 6 minutes. Maybe 5 if these roads cooperate. Emily, I need you to tell me about the house. The layout. How many exits? She forced herself to think past the fear. I only saw the main floor when he brought me in. Front door, back door in the kitchen. Maybe windows I could break? Basement windows? She looked up at the narrow casement windows near the ceiling. Too small. I couldn't fit through them. Then when I get there, I'm coming in the front. I need you to stay in the basement. Don't come up, no matter what you hear. Understand? What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. Is he still on the stairs? Emily glanced at Mark. He'd managed to stand, leaning heavily against the railing. His face was gray with pain. Yeah, he's not looking good. I don't care how he looks. I care about you. 4 minutes. Mark started climbing the stairs again, slower this time, using the railing to pull himself up. He's leaving, Emily said. Going upstairs. Let him. You stay put. But you said... I said don't let him leave the basement when I was worried about him getting weapons. Now I'm close enough that it doesn't matter. I'd rather have him upstairs and you safely away from him. You hear me? Stay in the basement. Lock yourself in if you can. There are no locks. Then improvise, barricade, anything. Mark reached the top of the stairs. He looked down at her, and for just a second she saw the person he used to be, confused and hurt and very young. Then the door slammed shut, and she heard something heavy being dragged across the floor above. He was barricading it from the other side. He locked me in, Emily said. Good. Adrian's voice was grim. That makes my job easier. 3 minutes. I'm on Route 47 now. I see a collapsed barn. White farmhouse? Yes, that's it. I see it. 2 minutes. Emily, when I get there, I need you away from the stairs, as far back as you can get. Behind that dryer you mentioned. Can you do that? She was already moving, wedging herself into the narrow space between the dryer and the wall. It smelled like lint and rust and old water, but it was solid cover. I'm there. Good girl. Now, no matter what you hear, you stay there. You don't come out until I tell you it's safe. Promise me. I promise. 1 minute. Emily pressed herself against the wall, the phone clutched to her chest. Her whole body was shaking now, cold and fear and adrenaline all mixing into something that felt like being shaken apart from the inside. Overhead, she heard Mark moving around, furniture scraping, something glass shattering, then silence. 30 seconds, Adrian said. You still with me? Yeah. What's your favorite color? The question was so unexpected she actually laughed. What? Your favorite color, tell me. Blue. Why? Mine's gray. The deep kind, right before a storm. You like coffee or tea? Coffee. Adrian, what? I'm pulling into the drive, cutting the lights. Emily, I'm getting you out of there. Hang tight. The line went quiet, but he didn't hang up. She could hear him moving, a car door opening, footsteps on gravel, controlled breathing. He was running, but trying not to sound like it. Then she heard it, upstairs, the front door splintering. A shout. Mark's voice, high and panicked. Who the hell are you? You can't. This is private property. The response was a crash so loud Emily felt it through the floor. More shouting, a heavy thud, something breaking. Silence. Emily? Adrian's voice on the phone, slightly breathless. I'm in. Where's the basement door? Kitchen. Back of the house. She heard his footsteps, quick and purposeful. Then the sound of something heavy being shoved aside, whatever Mark had used to barricade the door. The basement door opened. Light flooded the stairwell. Emily, it's me. I'm coming down. Don't be scared. But she was scared. Terrified. Because this was the moment where she'd find out if she'd made a terrible mistake, if she'd traded one danger for another. Adrian descended the stairs, and Emily's first thought was that he didn't look like someone who saved people. He looked like someone who hurt them. Tall, maybe 6'2", dressed in a dark suit that was now disheveled and splattered with something red. His face was all hard angles, sharp jaw, strong nose, eyes so dark they looked black in the dim light. There was blood on his knuckles. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs, hands visible, palms out. Emily Carter? His voice was the same one from the phone, that rough, certain tone that had kept her anchored through the worst of it. Adrian Voss? Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Yeah. He took a careful step forward. I'm going to come get you now, okay? You're safe. It's over. And something in her just broke. All the adrenaline, all the terror, all the forced calm she'd been using to survive. It drained out of her in a rush, leaving nothing but exhaustion and relief so intense it hurt. Her legs gave out. Adrian crossed the basement in 3 strides and caught her before she hit the ground. His arms were steady, solid, real. I've got you, he said quietly. You're okay. I've got you. Emily realized she was crying, great gasping sobs that she couldn't control. She pressed her face against his shoulder and let herself fall apart because she was alive, she was safe, someone had come. Where is he? She managed between sobs. Unconscious, zip-tied with his own supplies. Poetic justice. Adrian's hand was on the back of her head, careful and gentle. Police are on their way. I called them when I was pulling in. Your hands! She pulled back far enough to see the blood on his knuckles. You're hurt. That's not my blood. Something about the way he said it should have scared her. Instead, it just made her feel safer. How did you know? She asked. How did you know to come? Adrian helped her stand, keeping one arm around her shoulders when she wobbled. Your text. When I read it, I just knew. I don't know how to explain it, but I knew I had to get to you. You didn't know me. I was a wrong number. Yeah, you were. He met her eyes, and there was something in his expression she couldn't read. Something complicated. But I'm here now. That's what matters. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. "Come on," Adrian said. "Let's get you upstairs, get you warm. You're freezing." He was right. Now that the immediate danger was past, the cold was back with a vengeance. Her teeth chattered as he guided her toward the stairs. "What do I tell them?" she asked. "The police. About you. The truth. That I got your message and came to help." He paused. "Though maybe leave out the part where I broke his nose. Self-defense gets murky when you're a third party." Emily looked at him, really looked at him. At the expensive suit, the blood on his knuckles, the way he moved like violence was a language he spoke fluently. "Who are you?" she asked. "Really?" Adrian's expression shuddered. "Someone who answered your call. That's all you need to know right now." It should have been an ominous answer. A red flag. But Emily was too tired and too grateful to care. This man, this stranger, had driven into danger without hesitation, had kept her calm when she was falling apart, had promised to come and had actually shown up. That meant something. Everything, maybe. The sirens were very close now. Red and blue lights flickered through the narrow basement windows. "Thank you," Emily said quietly. "I know that's inadequate, but thank you." Adrian helped her up the stairs, one step at a time. "Don't thank me yet. We've got a long night ahead of us. Police questions, hospital, statements. You up for that?" "Do I have a choice?" "Not really." She almost laughed. "Then I guess I'm up for it." They emerged into the kitchen. Mark was on the floor by the overturned table, his face a mess of blood, his arms zip-tied behind his back. He wasn't moving. Emily looked at him, this person she'd thought she knew, this person who'd turned into a nightmare, and felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just a distant kind of relief that he couldn't hurt anyone else tonight. The front door burst open, police flooded in, guns drawn, shouting orders. "Hands up! Both of you now!" Adrian immediately raised his hands, positioning himself slightly in front of Emily. "She's the victim, Emily Carter. I'm the one who called it in. Suspects on the floor, incapacitated." But the officers weren't listening. They were looking at Adrian's bloody hands, his disheveled appearance, Mark's unconscious form. "On the ground, face down, do it now!" "Wait," Emily said, stepping forward. "No, you don't understand. Ma'am, step away from him." "He saved me, he's not—" But Adrian was already lowering himself to the floor, hands behind his head, completely calm. He caught her eye and gave a slight shake of his head. "Don't fight this." Two officers secured Adrian while others checked on Mark and cleared the rest of the house. An EMT appeared at Emily's elbow, trying to guide her outside, but she pulled away. "You're making a mistake," she told the officer holding Adrian. "He's the one who helped me. Mark Hendricks is the one who—" "We'll sort it out at the station, ma'am," the officer said, not unkindly. "Right now we need you to go with the paramedics, get checked out." Adrian was being lifted to his feet, hands cuffed behind his back. His eyes found hers across the chaos. "It's okay," he mouthed. "Go." But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. Emily had just started to feel safe, and now they were taking away the person who'd made her feel that way. "Please," she said to anyone who would listen. "Please, you're arresting the wrong person." Nobody was listening. As they led Adrian out to a patrol car, he looked back at her one more time. Even in handcuffs, even surrounded by police, he looked more in control than anyone else in the room. "Remember," he called back, "tell them the truth, all of it. Don't leave anything out." Then he was gone, and Emily was alone with strangers in uniforms and the EMT trying to take her vitals and the wreckage of the worst night of her life. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me," the EMT said gently. "You're hypothermic. We need to get you warm." Emily let herself be led outside into the cold night air. More police cars had arrived, their lights turning the farmhouse into a carnival of red and blue. An ambulance sat in the driveway, back doors open. She climbed in, let them wrap her in heated blankets, let them check her pulse and her pupils, and ask her questions she answered on autopilot. The whole time, she kept replaying the last few hours. The message that went to the wrong number. Adrian's voice on the phone, the promise he'd made and kept. A detective appeared at the ambulance doors. Middle-aged, kind eyes, patient demeanor. "Ms. Carter, I'm Detective Sarah Walsh. I know you've been through hell tonight, but I need to ask you some questions. Are you up for that?" Emily nodded, pulling the blanket tighter. Can you tell me what happened? Start from the beginning. So Emily did. She told her about Mark, about the study sessions and the drugged coffee and waking up in the basement, about the zip ties and the cold and the syringe filled with experimental serum, about the desperate text that went to the wrong number. This Adrian Voss, Detective Walsh said carefully. You'd never met him before tonight? Never. I didn't even know his name until he told me on the phone. But he drove out here, broke into the house, assaulted Mr. Hendricks. He saved my life. Emily met the detective's eyes. Mark was going to inject me with something. He said it was for an experiment. Adrian stopped him. That's not assault. That's what we're trying to determine. Walsh's expression was kind but firm. I believe you, Ms. Carter. But we need to follow protocol. Mr. Voss will be questioned, just like you, just like Mr. Hendricks when he wakes up. We'll piece together exactly what happened here tonight. When can I talk to him, Adrian? That depends on several factors. For now, focus on yourself. Do you have someone we can call? Family? Friends? Emily thought of her mother in Seattle, who'd worry herself sick. Of Jessica at the conference, who'd blame herself for not being there. Of Katie, who never got the message Emily tried to send. My mom, she said quietly. But it's late. Maybe in the morning? We'll call her now, Walsh said gently. Trust me, she'll want to know you're safe, no matter what time it is. The detective stepped away to make the call. Emily sat in the ambulance, wrapped in blankets, watching the chaos of the crime scene unfold around her. They were bringing Mark out now on a stretcher, his face bandaged, an officer walking alongside. He was conscious, she realized. Talking. Probably spinning some story about how he was the real victim here. The thought made her sick. Ms. Carter? One of the EMTs appeared with a clipboard. We'd like to transport you to County Memorial, get you fully checked out. Is that okay? Emily wanted to say no. Wanted to go home, crawl into her own bed, pretend this night never happened. But she knew better. Hypothermia, possible concussion from hitting the wall, cuts and bruises that should be documented. Okay, she agreed. As the ambulance pulled away from the farmhouse, Emily looked back through the rear window. The house was lit up like a stage set, officers moving in and out, evidence markers being placed. Somewhere in one of those patrol cars, Adrian was sitting in handcuffs because he'd answered a call from a stranger. She owed him, more than she could ever repay. But first, she had to survive the next few hours. Hospital, police station, official statements. Then maybe, they'd let her see the man who'd driven into the night to save someone he didn't know. The man whose voice had kept her alive. The man who'd promised to come, and had. At the hospital, everything became a blur of fluorescent lights and concerned faces and questions she answered over and over. Yes, she'd been drugged. No, she wasn't assaulted sexually. Yes, she wanted a rape kit done anyway, just to be sure. Yes, she wanted to press charges. Her mother arrived 3 hours later, having caught the first flight out of Seattle. She looked 10 years older than Emily remembered, her face pale with worry. Baby, she breathed, pulling Emily into a hug that hurt and healed at the same time. Oh, my baby girl. Emily let herself be held, let herself cry again. Let herself be someone's daughter instead of a survivor for just a few minutes. I'm okay, Mom. I'm okay. You're not okay. How could you be okay? I'm alive. That's what matters. Her mother pulled back, holding Emily's face in her hands. Who is this Adrian Voss? The police said he broke in, that he hurt that boy. He saved me, Mom. Mark was going to... Emily's voice broke. Adrian saved my life. By breaking someone's nose? By doing whatever it took. Emily met her mother's eyes. I sent him a text by mistake, a wrong number, and he came anyway. He didn't know me. He had no reason to help. But he came. Her mother's expression softened. I want to meet him, to thank him. You and me both. The police have him at the station. Then that's where we're going. Detective Walsh intercepted them in the waiting room. Mrs. Carter, I'm glad you're here. Miss Carter, we finished processing the scene. We'll need you to come down to the station to make an official statement, but it can wait until tomorrow if you'd rather. I want to do it now, Emily said. And I want to see Adrian Voss. Walsh hesitated. Mr. Voss is still being questioned. About what? He didn't do anything wrong. He broke into a private residence and assaulted. He saved a kidnapping victim from her captor. Emily was surprised by the steel in her own voice. He should be getting a medal, not interrogated. I understand you're grateful, but we have to. Where is he? The detective sighed. Interview room 2, but you can't. Emily was already walking, her mother following close behind. She'd been poked and prodded and questioned for hours. She was exhausted and scared, and her shoulder hurt like hell. But she wasn't leaving this hospital until she knew Adrian was okay. She found interview room 2 through a window in the hallway. Adrian sat at a metal table, still in his blood-stained suit, hands no longer cuffed, but resting calmly on the surface. Across from him sat 2 detectives she didn't recognize, both looking frustrated. Even through the glass, even after everything, Adrian looked completely in control. Emily pushed through the door before anyone could stop her. All 3 men looked up. The detectives started to protest, but Adrian's expression stopped them. Something flickered across his face. Relief, concern, something else she couldn't name. You should be resting, he said. You should be free. Emily turned to the detectives. Why is he still here? He didn't do anything wrong. Ms. Carter, this is highly irregular. So is a medical student being kidnapped by her study partner, but here we are. She was running on fumes and adrenaline, and she didn't care. Adrian Voss is not a criminal. He responded to a cry for help. He saved my life. If you're going to charge him with anything, you'll have to charge every good Samaritan in the state. One of the detectives, older, gray-haired, patient, leaned back in his chair. We're not charging him with anything, Ms. Carter. We're just trying to understand the sequence of events. Then let me help you understand. Emily pulled out the chair next to Adrian and sat. I was being held against my will. I managed to send one text message. By accident, it went to Mr. Voss instead of my friend. He could have ignored it, deleted it, called the police and let them handle it. Instead, he drove out there himself because he was closer and I was in immediate danger. When he arrived, he found me trapped in a basement with a man who intended to use me for medical experimentation without my consent. He neutralized the threat and called for help. That's not assault. That's heroism. The older detective studied her for a long moment. Then he looked at Adrian. Is that your version of events? Exactly. Adrian's voice was calm. I heard someone in danger. I responded. That's all. You could have waited for police. She didn't have time to wait. The detective's expression shifted slightly. Respect, maybe. You have any formal training? Military? Law enforcement? Private security. Long time ago. You were armed? No. But you incapacitated a man who outweighed you by at least 20 pounds. Adrian's smile was cold. He was expecting a victim, not a fight. That gives you an advantage. The 2 detectives exchanged a look. Some wordless communication passed between them. We're going to need a formal statement, the gray-haired one said finally. But you're free to go, Mr. Voss. Try to stay available for the next few days in case we have follow-up questions. Adrian stood, buttoning his jacket despite the bloodstains. Of course. Emily stood too, her legs shaky now that the adrenaline was fading. Adrian steadied her with a hand on her elbow. You need rest, he said quietly. So do you. I'll sleep when you're safe. I am safe. Because of you. They looked at each other, and Emily realized that something had shifted between them in the last few hours. This man was no longer a stranger. He was the person who'd heard her fear and answered, who'd driven through the night without hesitation, who'd fought for her when he had no reason to. Come on, her mother said from the doorway, her voice gentle. Let's get you home, honey. But Emily didn't move. Adrian, how do I owe you. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. You saved my life. You saved your own life. I just helped. He pulled a business card from his pocket, somehow still pristine despite everything, and pressed it into her hand. You need anything, you call me, day or night. Understand? Emily looked at the card. Simple, expensive card stock. Just a name and a phone number. The number she'd texted by mistake. Okay, she whispered. Adrian held her gaze for another moment, then nodded to her mother and walked out of the interview room. Emily watched him go, this man who'd appeared from nowhere and changed everything. That's quite a wrong number you dialed, her mother said softly. Emily looked at the card in her hand, at the number that had saved her life. Yeah, she agreed. It really is. The apartment her mother had rented felt wrong. Too quiet. Too clean. Too safe in a way that made Emily's skin crawl because safety felt like a lie now. She stood in the living room at 3 in the morning, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like someone else's detergent, staring at Adrian's business card. She'd been doing that a lot over the past week, pulling it out, reading the number she already had memorized, putting it back. Her mother was asleep in the bedroom. Emily had insisted she take the bed, claiming the couch was more comfortable. Really, she just couldn't stand being in an enclosed space with the door closed. Every time she tried, her throat tightened and her pulse spiked, and suddenly she was back in that basement. The therapist the victim's advocate had assigned her said it was normal. Post-traumatic stress. Give it time. Take the medication if the nightmares get too bad. Emily had thrown the prescription in the trash. She'd spent 2 years studying pharmacology. She knew exactly what those pills would do. Dull the edges, blur the memories, make everything feel like it was happening underwater. She needed to feel this, needed to remember, because forgetting felt like letting Mark win. Mark, who was currently in county lockup, denied bail, facing charges that carried real prison time. Kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, attempted assault with a deadly weapon. They'd classified the syringe as a weapon once the lab analyzed what was in it. Some combination of hallucinogens and neural stimulants that would have either killed her or left her with permanent brain damage. Emily's hands shook. She set down the business card and picked up her phone instead. 43 missed calls, most from numbers she didn't recognize, reporters probably. A few from classmates who'd heard what happened and wanted to check in, which really meant they wanted the story firsthand. 3 from the dean's office at the medical school. 2 from Detective Walsh. And 1 text message sent 4 days ago from a number she did recognize. Adrian's number. How are you holding up? She'd read it maybe 100 times. Never replied. What was she supposed to say? I can't sleep. I can't eat. I keep seeing his face every time I close my eyes. Thanks for asking. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. It was 3 in the morning. Normal people didn't text at 3 in the morning. But Adrian had answered at midnight when she'd sent that desperate plea. Maybe he was a night person too. Can't sleep, she typed, then deleted it. Too pathetic. Thank you again, she tried. Delete. She'd already thanked him a dozen times. Are you awake? Delete, 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 delete. Just call him, she muttered to herself. Her finger hit the call button before she could overthink it. It rang once, twice. Emily. His voice was clear, alert, no grogginess. He'd been awake. I'm sorry, it's late. I didn't mean to. You didn't wake me. I was working. At 3 in the morning? Best time, no interruptions. A pause. You okay? The question nearly broke her. Because no, she wasn't okay. And everyone kept asking like there was a right answer, like she was supposed to be healing on some kind of schedule. I don't know how to answer that, she admitted. Then don't. You want to talk or you just need someone on the line? Something in her chest loosened. He got it. He understood that sometimes you just needed proof that you weren't alone in the dark. Talk, she said. Maybe, if you have time. I have time. Emily sank onto the couch, pulling the blanket tighter. What are you working on? Contracts, boring stuff. You'd fall asleep in 5 minutes if I explained it. Try me. I could use boring right now. So Adrian talked. Something about commercial real estate and zoning disputes and lease negotiations. His voice was steady and low, and Emily found herself focusing on the sound of it rather than the words. It was the same voice that had kept her calm in the basement, that had promised help was coming. I'm not actually listening to anything you're saying, she interrupted after a while. Adrian's laugh was quiet. I know. That's okay. Tell me something real. About you. Like what? Anything. Where you're from. How you take your coffee. Why you were driving on Route 47 at midnight on a Friday. Silence on the other end. Emily thought maybe she'd pushed too far, asked for something he wasn't willing to give. Black, Adrian said finally. I take my coffee black. I'm from Chicago originally, moved east about 10 years ago. And I was coming back from a meeting that ran late. What kind of meeting happens at midnight? The kind where the other party doesn't keep normal business hours. It was a non-answer, but Emily let it slide. Do you always drive around alone at midnight? Sometimes. I like driving, helps me think. What do you think about? Another pause. Tonight? You. Whether you're sleeping, whether you're safe. Emily's throat tightened. I'm safe. My mom's here. We got a hotel first, then she found this sublet for the month. Security building, doorman, the works. Good. I keep thinking about that night, Emily said quietly. About the message going to the wrong number. The odds of that. Of you being close enough. Of you actually answering. Of you being the kind of person who'd drop everything to help a stranger. It's astronomical. Maybe. Or maybe there's no such thing as wrong numbers, just different kinds of right. You sound like a fortune cookie. I've been told I have hidden depths. Emily almost smiled. The police, are they still bothering you? Closed the case yesterday. Self-defense, defense of others. They actually apologized for the inconvenience. Good. That's good. Emily picked at the edge of the blanket. I gave my statement, told them everything. About Mark, about the basement, about you. They asked a lot of questions about you, actually. What kind of questions? How you knew to come. Why you didn't wait for police. Whether I thought you used excessive force. She paused. I told them you used exactly the right amount of force. That you saved my life. What did they say to that? That I was lucky you answered the phone. They're not wrong. Emily closed her eyes. Adrian, who are you, really? The police asked about your background, and I realized I don't know anything about you. You have this expensive card with just a phone number. You drive a car that probably costs more than my student loans. You talk like someone who's used to people listening, and you knew exactly how to handle Mark, not like someone who got lucky, but like someone who's done it before. The silence stretched so long she thought he'd hung up. I'm someone who helps people, Adrian said finally. That's all you need to know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got right now. Emily should have felt frustrated. Instead, she felt oddly reassured, because Adrian not telling her everything meant there was more to tell, meant he might stick around long enough for her to find out. Okay, she said. Okay? You helped me when I needed it most. Everything else is just details. Another quiet laugh. You're handling this better than most people would. I'm a mess, Adrian. I can't sleep. I can't go into small rooms. I threw away a perfectly good prescription for anxiety medication because I'm too stubborn to admit I need help. That's not being a mess. That's being human, says the man working at 3 a.m. because apparently sleep is optional. Touché. Emily shifted on the couch, tucking her feet under her. Can I ask you something? Shoot. In the basement when you were on the phone, you asked about my favorite color. I remember. Why? You were scared. I needed you present, focused on something other than the fear. Color's easy. Concrete. Everybody's got an answer. What if I'd said I didn't have one? Then I would have asked your favorite food or song or worst childhood haircut. Anything to keep you talking, keep you with me. Emily's chest ached. You're really good at this, the whole saving people thing. I've had practice. How much practice? Enough to know that you're going to be okay. It might not feel like it now, but you will be. Promise? I don't make promises I can't keep. That should have been ominous. Instead, it felt like the most honest thing anyone had said to her all week. They talked for another hour. About nothing, about everything. Adrian told her about a restaurant he liked that made the best pasta he'd ever had. Emily told him about the cadaver in her anatomy lab that her class had nicknamed Herbert. They debated coffee versus tea, city versus suburbs, whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Normal conversation, the kind you had with friends, not with strangers who'd saved your life. When Emily finally hung up, the sun was starting to rise and she felt lighter than she had in days. Her mother emerged from the bedroom an hour later, hair disheveled, worry already creasing her forehead. You're up early? She said. Couldn't sleep. Her mother sat beside her on the couch. Honey, we need to talk about what happens next. Emily had been dreading this conversation. Mom, the dean called me yesterday. They want to know if you're coming back to finish the semester. Of course I am. Emily, you've been through trauma. Nobody would blame you for taking time off. There's a whole semester break coming up. I could what? Sit around feeling sorry for myself? Let Mark steal my future along with everything else? Emily heard her voice rising and forced herself to calm down. I need normal, Mom. I need to go back to studying and exams and complaining about how much coffee it takes to memorize the brachial plexus. I need my life back. Her mother's eyes filled. You're so strong. I'm not. I'm just stubborn. You're your father's daughter. Her mother squeezed her hand. But you need to talk to someone. A professional. This thing with calling strangers at 4 a.m, Emily's stomach dropped. You heard that? Thin walls. I wasn't eavesdropping, but I heard enough. Her mother's expression was gentle but firm. Who is Adrian Voss, really? I told you, he's the person who saved me. And now he's the person you call in the middle of the night? It was one phone call. Emily, what do you want me to say? That I'm grateful? I am. That I feel safe when I talk to him? I do. That maybe the only person who understands what I went through is the person who was there? Emily pulled her hand away. You weren't in that basement, Mom. You didn't feel what I felt. Adrian did. He heard it in my voice. He knows. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. I'm worried you're transferring, attaching to him because he represents safety. Maybe I am, or maybe he's just a decent person who I'm allowed to be friends with. Friends? Yes, friends. Is that so hard to believe? Her mother sighed. No, honey, it's not. I just want you to be careful. We don't know anything about this man. I know he came when I called. That's enough. But was it? Emily wondered as her mother retreated to make breakfast. What did she actually know about Adrian Voss? She pulled out her laptop and did what she should have done a week ago. Searched his name. The results were interesting. Adrian Voss appeared in business journals and society pages. Always in the background, never the focus. A silent partner in a dozen companies. A consultant for firms that didn't usually need consulting. His name appeared in property records for buildings all over the eastern seaboard, but always buried in LLC paperwork, never as the primary owner. There were photos. Adrian in a tux at charity galas, standing slightly apart from the crowd. Adrian shaking hands with a senator at some fundraiser, his expression unreadable. Adrian exiting a courthouse, no context given, no social media, no interviews, no personal details beyond the bare facts. Age 36, never married, no known family. Net worth estimated somewhere between 20 and 200 million, depending on which financial blog you believed. Emily clicked on an article from 3 years ago. Mystery man behind major development deal. It had a photo of Adrian leaving a meeting, and someone had managed to catch him mid-turn, his expression cold and dangerous. This was the man who'd held her while she cried? Who'd asked about her favorite color? Who'd stayed on the phone until sunrise, talking about nothing? Her phone buzzed. Text from Adrian. Googling me yet? Emily nearly dropped the laptop. How did he... Don't look so surprised. Everyone does. I'm not everyone, she typed back. No, you're really not. So what am I going to find? Depends on how deep you dig. Surface level? I'm boring. Beneath that? Still boring, just with better lawyers. Why all the mystery? Privacy is a luxury. I pay for mine. Emily stared at the screen, then typed, Are you dangerous? The response took longer this time. Not to you. Which wasn't exactly a no, but to other people. When necessary. That's ominous. That's honest. You asked for real, remember? Emily closed the laptop. She could spend hours going down the rabbit hole of Adrian Voss, mystery businessman. Or she could just ask him. Have coffee with me, she texted. When? Today. Now. Whenever you're free. I'm free now. Where are you? She sent him the address of the sublet, immediately regretted it. What was she doing, giving her location to a man she barely knew? Except she did know him. Maybe not his business dealings, or his net worth, or why he showed up in photos with senators. But she knew his voice in the dark, knew he kept his promises, knew he'd driven into danger without hesitation. That had to count for something. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks south, corner of Madison and 5th, Adrian texted. Meet you there in 30? Make it an hour. I need to look less like I haven't slept in a week. You could show up in pajamas and I wouldn't care. I care. 1 hour. Emily showered and dressed in actual clothes for the first time since the hospital. Jeans and a sweater, minimal makeup to hide the shadows under her eyes. Her mother watched with barely concealed worry. "I'm meeting Adrian for coffee," Emily said, daring her to object. "Do you want me to come?" "No, but thank you." "Emily." "Mom, I'll be fine. It's a public place, broad daylight, and he's not going to hurt me." "How do you know?" "Because if he wanted to hurt me, he had plenty of opportunity in that farmhouse." Emily grabbed her jacket. "I'll be back in a couple hours." The coffee shop was exactly the kind of place Adrian would pick. Quiet, upscale, the kind where coffee cost $8 and nobody bothered you. Emily spotted him in the back corner, already there despite her being 10 minutes early. He stood when she approached. Different suit, same controlled grace. The blood was gone from his knuckles, but she remembered it anyway. "You look better," he said. "Liar, I look exhausted." "Better than last week. That's something." He pulled out her chair before she could object. "What do you drink?" "Surprise me." Adrian went to the counter and returned with 2 cups. Emily took a sip and nearly groaned. Perfect temperature, perfect blend, exactly sweet enough without being syrup. "How did you know?" "You said you like coffee. I took an educated guess on the rest." They sat in silence for a moment. Emily studied him in the daylight. He looked different than he had that night, less dangerous, more human. But the edge was still there, visible in the way he positioned his chair to see both exits, in the way his eyes tracked movement through the shop. "You've been researching me," Adrian said. "Google isn't exactly research." "Find anything interesting?" "Questions, mostly. Like why a consultant needs to be worth 9 figures, or why someone who claims to help people keeps showing up in photos with politicians and CEOs. Adrian sipped his coffee. "I solve problems for people who can afford to pay. Sometimes those people have money. Sometimes they have power. Doesn't change what I do." "Which is?" "Whatever needs doing." "That's vague." "It's accurate." Emily set down her cup. "I'm trying to figure you out." "Why?" "Because you saved my life and I don't even know your middle name." "James? Adrian James Voss." "See? Was that so hard?" Adrian's smile was slight. "What else do you want to know?" "Everything, nothing, I don't know." Emily ran her finger around the rim of her cup. "I keep thinking about that night, about how you just came. No questions, no hesitation. Who does that?" "Someone who's been where you were." Emily looked up sharply. "What?" "Different circumstances. Long time ago. But I know what it feels like to need help and not get it." Adrian's expression was carefully neutral. "So when you called, when I heard that fear in your voice, I couldn't not come. Does that make sense?" "Yeah," Emily said softly. "It does." "Your turn. Tell me something real." "Like what?" "Why medicine?" "You said you wanted to be the person who makes impossible situations manageable, but that's the elevator pitch. What's the real reason?" Emily hadn't expected the question to hit so hard. "My dad's heart attack, that was part of it. But the real reason? I was 14 when my best friend's mom got diagnosed with ovarian cancer, stage 4. She had 6 months, maybe less." "Did she make it?" "She made it 18 months, because her oncologist refused to give up. Tried every treatment, every clinical trial, every experimental option. And when none of that worked, when it was clear she was dying, that doctor sat with her and her family and made sure those last weeks weren't about pain and fear. They were about time, memories, goodbyes that mattered." Adrian was quiet, listening. "I watched that doctor fight for her patient like she was family. And I thought, that's what I want to be. Someone who fights even when it's hopeless. Someone who makes the unbearable slightly more bearable." "That's not an elevator pitch," Adrian said. "That's a calling." "Yeah, well, that calling currently involves memorizing the 12 cranial nerves and trying not to throw up during cadaver lab, so it's very glamorous." "When do you go back?" "Classes start again in 2 weeks. I'll be behind, but I can catch up." "You sure you're ready?" Emily met his eyes. "Are you asking as someone who cares, or as someone who thinks I'm broken?" "The first one." "Then yes, I'm ready. I need to be ready, because if I let what happened stop me, then Mark wins. And I can't let him win." Adrian nodded slowly. "Okay." "Just okay?" No lecture about trauma and healing and taking my time. You know what you need better than I do. If you say you're ready, you're ready. It was such a simple statement, such basic trust in her judgment, that Emily felt her eyes burn. Everyone else had been treating her like she might shatter. Adrian was treating her like she was steel. Thank you, she managed. For what? For not telling me how to feel. They talked for 2 more hours. About everything and nothing. Adrian told her about growing up in Chicago, about a mother who died too young and a father who drank too much. Emily told him about medical school, about the impossible pressure and the constant fear that she wasn't smart enough, wasn't good enough. You survived a kidnapping, Adrian pointed out. Medical school should be easy after that. You'd think, but somehow the Krebs cycle is still more terrifying than Mark Hendricks. Everyone's got their demons. What's yours? Adrian's expression shuddered. Not coffee shop conversation. Fair enough. Emily checked her phone and swore. I've been here 3 hours. My mom's probably called the National Guard. I'll walk you back. You don't have to. I want to. They walked through the cooling afternoon, neither rushing. When they reached Emily's building, she turned to face him. Can I ask you something? Always. Why are you doing this? The coffee, the phone calls, checking on me. You did your Good Samaritan duty. You saved me. You don't owe me anything else. Adrian was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes searching her face. Maybe I'm not doing it because I owe you. Maybe I'm doing it because I want to. Why would you want to? Because when I heard your voice that night, something in it. He paused, choosing words carefully. It reminded me that I used to be the kind of person who helped people without calculating the cost, and I'd like to be that person again. So I'm your redemption arc. You're someone I don't want to let down. Emily's breath caught. Adrian, go on up. Your mom's probably frantic. He stepped back, hands in his pockets. Call me if you need anything, day or night. I mean it. I will. Emily watched him walk away, the strange and complicated man who'd crashed into her life at exactly the right moment. Or the wrong moment. She still wasn't sure which. Her mother was indeed frantic, and Emily spent the next hour reassuring her that yes, she was fine. No, nothing happened. He was a perfect gentleman. But that night, lying awake at 2 a.m, Emily pulled out her phone and texted Adrian. You awake? The response came within seconds. Yeah. You okay? Define okay. Can't sleep, but not in danger. Nightmares? Emily hesitated, then decided on honesty. Every time I close my eyes. Her phone rang instead of another text. She answered on the first ring. Tell me about them, Adrian said without preamble. That's a weird request. Bringing them into the light makes them smaller. Trust me. So Emily did. She told him about the dreams where she was back in the basement, but this time Adrian didn't come. About the ones where Mark's face morphed into something inhuman. About the worst one, where she texted for help and her phone showed the message as delivered, but nobody ever answered. I'm always going to answer, Adrian said quietly. You know that, right? You can't promise that. Watch me, day or night, crisis or just can't sleep. You call, I answer. That's the deal. We don't have a deal. We do now. And somehow, impossibly, Emily believed him. They fell into a pattern over the next week. Emily would wake from nightmares and text Adrian, and he'd call and talk her down. Sometimes about serious things, her fears, his past, the ways trauma rewires your brain. Sometimes about completely random topics, best pizza toppings, worst movies, whether aliens were real. He never made her feel weak for needing the contact. Never suggested she should be over it by now. Just answered every time, kept his promises, became the steady constant in her shaking world. Her mother noticed. You're getting attached, she said one morning over breakfast. I'm making a friend. Honey, he's not just a friend. He's the man who saved you. That's going to create feelings that aren't real. Who says they're not real? Therapists, psychologists, everyone who studies trauma bonding. Emily set down her coffee harder than necessary. I'm not trauma bonding. I'm talking to someone who gets it. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. And even if I am developing feelings, so what? He's a good person, smart, funny, actually listens when I talk. You barely know him. I know he showed up when it mattered. Her mother sighed. That's exactly what I'm worried about. But Emily didn't care what her mother worried about. Because 2 days before she was supposed to return to medical school, Mark's lawyer filed a motion that changed everything. Detective Walsh called personally to tell her. "He's claiming diminished capacity," Walsh said, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "Says he was having a psychotic break, that he wasn't in his right mind." Emily's hand clenched around the phone. "That's bullshit. He planned this. He drugged me. He brought me to that farmhouse. He had supplies ready." "I know, and we're fighting it. But his lawyer's good, and they've got psychiatrists willing to testify. This could drag out for months." "What does that mean for the charges?" "Best case, they stick and he goes away for 20 years. Worst case, he pleads down to something lighter, serves 5, and gets out on good behavior. 5 years. For kidnapping, for experimentation, for torture." Emily ended the call and threw her phone across the room. Her mother found her 20 minutes later, still shaking with rage. "Sweetheart, don't. Just don't." But her mother wrapped her in a hug anyway, and Emily let herself break down for the second time in 2 weeks. When she finally pulled herself together, she picked up her phone, miraculously uncracked, and called Adrian. "He's getting away with it," she said without preamble. "Who?" "Mark. His lawyer's claiming he was crazy, and they might actually buy it." Silence on the other end. Then, "Where are you?" "The sublet." "I'm coming over." "Adrian, you don't have to." "I'm already in my car." He arrived 15 minutes later. Emily's mother opened the door, her expression wary. "Mr. Voss?" "Mrs. Carter." Adrian's tone was respectful but firm. "I'd like to speak with Emily, if that's all right." "I'm not sure that's a good idea." "Mom." Emily appeared behind her. "It's fine, let him in." Her mother reluctantly stepped aside. Adrian entered, taking in the apartment with a single sweep of his eyes. Cataloging exits again, Emily noticed. Always aware. "What happened?" he asked. Emily explained about the motion, about the possibility of Mark getting a reduced sentence. Adrian listened without interrupting, his expression growing colder with every word. "That's not going to happen," he said finally. "You can't know that." "Yes, I can." Something in his tone made Emily pause. "What are you going to do?" "Make sure justice actually gets served. Adrian, I know people. Lawyers who specialize in this kind of case. Prosecutors who won't fold to a diminished capacity defense. I can make calls." "Why would they listen to you?" "Because I've helped them before. And because I don't ask for favors often, which means when I do, people pay attention." Emily's mother stepped forward. "Mr. Voss, while we appreciate the offer, I'm not sure we're comfortable with..." "With what?" Adrian's eyes flicked to her, sharp. "With making sure the man who kidnapped your daughter faces real consequences? With using resources most people don't have access to? With ensuring Emily's not victimized twice, once by her attacker and once by a system that values legal technicalities over justice? With our daughter getting involved with someone we don't know or trust?" "Mom!" Emily's face burned, but Adrian just nodded. "That's fair. You don't know me. You have no reason to trust me beyond the fact that I helped Emily when she needed it. So let me be clear about what I'm offering. I have connections in the legal system. I can make sure the prosecutors handling this case have the resources and expertise to fight Mark's motion. That's it. No strings, no expectations, just making sure the right thing happens." "And what do you get out of it?" her mother asked. "Peace of mind that Emily can move on with her life." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." Emily stepped between them. "I want his help, Mom." "Emily, I want Mark to pay for what he did. If Adrian can help make that happen, then yes, I want it." Her mother looked between them, clearly torn. Finally, she sighed. "Fine, but I want to be kept informed. Every step." "Of course," Adrian said. They sat at the small dining table, Adrian making calls with quiet efficiency. Emily listened as he spoke to lawyers and prosecutors. Each conversation brief and to the point. He didn't threaten or cajole, just stated facts and asked questions, and somehow got promises that made Emily's legal situation suddenly look a lot more hopeful. After the 4th call, he hung up and turned to her. "Okay, I've got a team pulling together everything on Mark's background, history of complaints, academic misconduct, anything that shows a pattern. And I've connected the prosecutor to a forensic psychiatrist who specializes in debunking diminished capacity defenses." "Just like that?" "Just like that." "How?" her mother asked. Adrian met her eyes. I told you, I help people. Sometimes that means knowing who to call. Emily felt tears prickling again. Thank you. Don't thank me until it's done. But it felt done already. Felt like Adrian had taken this impossible situation and made it manageable, just like Emily had always wanted to do for her patients. I should go, Adrian said, standing. Let you both get some rest. Emily, call me if you need anything. I will. At the door, he paused. You start classes in 2 days? Yeah. You ready? Getting there. You'll be great. And he was gone. Emily's mother waited exactly 10 seconds after the door closed. That man is dangerous. That man just saved my case. I'm not talking about legal connections. I'm talking about the way he looks at you. Emily's heart skipped. How does he look at me? Like you're the only person in the room. Like he'd burn the world down if it meant keeping you safe. Her mother's expression was worried. That kind of intensity, it's not healthy, Emily. But Emily wasn't sure she cared about healthy anymore. She cared about safe, about seen, about someone who actually showed up when everything fell apart. And Adrian was all of those things, even if he was also dangerous. Maybe especially because he was dangerous. The lecture hall felt smaller than Emily remembered. Same tiered seating, same worn desks with carved initials from decades of stressed students, same faint smell of coffee and desperation. But everything looked different through the lens of what had happened. She stood in the doorway, her backpack heavy with textbooks she'd barely touched in 3 weeks. Students filtered past her, some glancing her way with obvious recognition, others deliberately not looking. Word had spread. Of course it had. Medical school was a small world, and kidnapping made for good gossip. You can do this, she muttered to herself. Her phone buzzed, text from Adrian. First day back. How's it going? Still in the hallway. Haven't made it inside yet. What's stopping you? Emily stared at the phone. What was stopping her? Fear that everyone would stare? That they'd ask questions she didn't want to answer? That she'd have a panic attack in the middle of cardiovascular physiology? Me. I'm stopping me. Then get out of your own way. You've survived worse than a lecture. Emily almost smiled. You're very motivational. You should consider a side career. I'll add it to my resume. Now go sit down before you miss the first 10 minutes and spend the rest of class lost. He was right. Emily took a breath and walked into the lecture hall. The whispers started immediately. She felt eyes tracking her as she climbed the stairs to an empty seat in the back. Someone's phone buzzed. Then another. By the time she sat down, half the class was looking at her like she was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid for showing up. Dr. Morrison, the cardiovascular physiology professor, cleared his throat at the front of the room. Welcome back, everyone. I trust you all had a restful break. His eyes found Emily's briefly. Let's begin with cardiac output and the factors that influence it. Emily opened her laptop and tried to focus. Stroke volume, heart rate, preload and afterload. The familiar rhythm of medical terminology should have been comforting. Instead, every time someone shifted in their seat behind her, her pulse spiked. Halfway through the lecture, her phone vibrated again. Breathe, you're doing great. Emily glanced around confused. Adrian couldn't possibly see her right now. Unless... She looked toward the back of the lecture hall where a small window overlooked the corridor. No one there. How do you know I'm doing great? Are you psychic? Lucky guess. Are you? Am I what? Doing great. Emily considered lying, decided against it. I'm here. That's something. That's everything. When the lecture ended, Emily stayed in her seat while others filed out. She wasn't ready for the inevitable questions, the false sympathy, the morbid curiosity disguised as concern. Emily? She looked up. Jessica, her roommate, stood at the end of the row. They hadn't spoken since before the kidnapping. Jessica had texted a dozen times, but Emily hadn't known what to say. Hey, Emily said. Emily, can we talk? Jessica's expression was careful. Or if you're not ready, that's totally fine. No, it's okay. Let's talk. They found an empty classroom 2 doors down. Jessica sat across from her, hands twisted together. I'm so sorry, Jessica burst out. I should have been here. If I hadn't gone to that stupid conference. Jess, stop. This wasn't your fault. I was your emergency contact. I should have. What? Magically known I'd get kidnapped? Developed psychic powers? Emily shook her head. You couldn't have prevented this. Jessica's eyes were red. When I heard what happened, I wanted to fly back immediately, but your mom said you needed space, and I didn't want to make things worse, but then I kept thinking about how you were alone and scared, and I wasn't alone. The words came out before Emily could stop them. Jessica blinked. Your mom said she flew in, so I figured, not my mom, someone else. A stranger, actually. Or he was a stranger. It's complicated. The guy from the news, the one who found you? Emily had forgotten there'd been news coverage. She'd refused to read any of it. Adrian, yeah. The articles made him sound like some kind of vigilante. He's not a vigilante. He's just someone who answered when I called for help. Jessica studied her. You say his name different. What? Adrian. You say it like it means something. Emily's face heated. He saved my life. Of course it means something. That's not what I mean, and you know it. Before Emily could respond, the door opened. A group of classmates stood there, led by Thomas Chen, one of the top students in their year. Emily, we wanted to talk to you. Emily tensed. About? About Mark. Thomas's expression was grim. We're putting together a formal complaint to the administration. Turns out you weren't the first person he creeped out. 3 other students have come forward with stories about inappropriate behavior. What kind of stories? Following people to their cars, showing up at their apartments uninvited. One girl said he tried to get her to participate in an informal study that set off all her alarm bells. Thomas paused. We should have said something earlier, should have compared notes, but everyone thought they were overreacting. And now you feel guilty, Emily finished. I get it, but this isn't on you either. Mark was good at seeming harmless. The administration's launching an internal investigation, another student added, but they're being weird about it, asking questions about you and Mark's relationship, whether you ever gave him reason to think what? Emily's voice went cold. That I wanted to be kidnapped, drugged, used for experiments? No, that's not what I meant. But they're looking for ways to minimize their liability, and that means they're going to try to paint this as a personal dispute that went wrong, not a failure of their vetting process. Emily's hands clenched. He got through their background checks, their interviews, their screening, and now they want to blame me? We're not going to let them, Jessica said firmly. That's why we're here. We want to support you, whatever you need. Emily looked at the faces around her. Some she knew well, others barely at all. But they were here, offering help, and that had to mean something. Thank you, she managed. Really? But right now I just need to get through classes and try to feel normal again. Thomas nodded. Understood. But if that changes, we've got your back. After they left, Emily sat alone in the empty classroom and texted Adrian. Apparently Mark had a history of being creepy, and no one reported it. People rarely do. Easier to excuse than confront. The school's trying to cover their ass. Of course they are. Liability over truth. Standard procedure. I hate this. I know. How do you always know what to say? I don't. I just know when to shut up and listen. Emily smiled despite everything. You're not shutting up. You're texting. Technicality. How many more classes today? 2. Anatomy lab and pharmacology. The cadaver one? Yeah. You going to be okay with that? Emily hadn't let herself think about it. Anatomy lab meant being in a small space with a dead body and sharp instruments and the smell of formaldehyde. All things that shouldn't bother a medical student but suddenly felt loaded with new meaning. I have to be. No, you don't. You can leave if it's too much. That's not weakness. Feels like it. It's self-preservation. There's a difference. But Emily went to anatomy lab anyway, because Adrian was right. She'd survived worse than a lecture. Even if her hand shook when she picked up the scalpel, even if the smell made her stomach turn in ways it never had before, even if she had to excuse herself twice to breathe in the hallway. Her lab partner, a quiet guy named David, didn't ask questions. Just took over when she stepped away and welcomed her back when she returned. Small kindnesses. They added up. Pharmacology was easier. Just lecture, no hands-on work. Emily took notes on drug interactions and half-lives and tried not to think about the syringe Mark had been holding. The experimental serum that could have killed her, or worse. By the time classes ended, she was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. Her brain felt scraped raw. She texted Adrian. Survived day 1. Proud of you. Don't be. I almost threw up in anatomy lab. But you didn't. That's what matters. I need a drink. You need sleep. That too. But drink first. Emily. Adrian. A pause. Then, there's a wine bar 3 blocks from your place. Quiet, low key. Meet me there in 30? You buying? Obviously. Emily went back to the sublet long enough to change and tell her mother she was going out. Her mother's expression said everything about what she thought of that plan, but she didn't argue. Progress. The wine bar was exactly as advertised. Small, dim, the kind of place where conversation stayed private. Adrian was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 glasses of red wine. You ordered for me? Emily slid into the seat across from him. You said you needed a drink. Figured I'd expedite the process. Emily took a sip. It was good, really good. The kind of wine that probably cost more than her textbooks. Rough day? Adrian asked. Is it that obvious? You're still in your clothes from this morning. You've got pen marks on your hand from note-taking, and you're holding that wine like it's a life preserver. Emily looked down. He was right on all counts. Am I that transparent? Only to people paying attention. And you're paying attention. Always. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The bar had maybe 6 other patrons, all absorbed in their own worlds. Emily felt herself starting to relax for the first time all day. Tell me about the worst part, Adrian said. Anatomy lab. I thought I'd be fine. I've been working with cadavers for over a year. But today, the smell, the instruments, she shook her head. It was like my brain couldn't separate the clinical from the traumatic. Give it time. Everyone keeps saying that. Give it time. Be patient. Healing isn't linear. But what if time doesn't fix it? What if I'm just broken now? Adrian's expression hardened. You're not broken. How do you know? Because broken things don't get up and go to class the day they're dreading most. They don't push through panic to take notes on cardiovascular physiology. They don't text strangers at 3 a.m. trying to make sense of their nightmares. He leaned forward. You're not broken, Emily. You're bent. There's a difference. That's poetic. It's true. Emily finished her wine and signaled for another. Adrian raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Tell me about your day, she said. I need to think about something other than my own disaster. Contract negotiations, financial reports, conference calls with people who think they're more important than they are. Sounds boring. It is. Then why do it? Adrian considered the question. Because boring pays for the interesting. Which is? Helping people who can't help themselves. Emily studied him over the rim of her glass. Is that what I am? A charity case? You're someone who needed help. There's a difference. Everyone keeps telling me about differences. Broken versus bent, charity versus help. Maybe there aren't as many differences as people think. Maybe. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then silenced it. Sorry. Important? It can wait. But his phone buzzed again and again. Adrian's jaw tightened. You should get that, Emily said. I'm here with you. And whoever that is really needs to talk to you. She stood. I should get home anyway. Mom's probably timing how long I've been gone. Adrian caught her wrist gently. I'm sorry. Don't be. You have a life. I can't monopolize all your time. You're not monopolizing anything. But Emily could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes kept flicking to his phone. Something was wrong. Go, she said. Handle whatever crisis is blowing up your phone. I'll be fine. Emily, I mean it. I'm okay. And if I'm not okay, I'll call you. That was the deal, right? Adrian stood slowly. The deal was I answer when you call, day or night. Then I'll call if I need you. Promise. He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he pulled out his wallet and left enough cash on the table to cover both drinks and a generous tip. Get home safe. Text me when you're there. Yes, Dad. I'm serious. So am I. Go. Emily watched him leave, phone already to his ear, his voice low and urgent. Whatever was happening, it was serious, and for the first time since they'd met, she felt like she was seeing a glimpse of the other Adrian. The one who made senators return his calls and prosecutors jump when he asked. She finished her second glass of wine and headed home, pleasantly buzzed and emotionally drained. Her mother was watching television when she walked in. How was it? Long, hard, but I got through it. Her mother studied her. You've been drinking. 2 glasses of wine. I'm 24, Mom. Legally allowed. I know. I just worry. About me becoming an alcoholic or about me spending time with Adrian? Both. Emily sank onto the couch. He's a good person. I'm sure he is, but you're vulnerable right now, and he's what? Dangerous? Intense? Too involved in my life? Emily rubbed her eyes. Maybe he is all those things. But he's also the only person who doesn't treat me like I'm made of glass. Everyone else is so careful around me, like one wrong word will make me shatter. Adrian just treats me like a person. That's because he doesn't see the whole picture. Or maybe he sees it better than anyone else. Emily stood. I'm going to bed. Early class tomorrow. She made it to the bathroom before the tears started, cried quietly into a towel so her mother wouldn't hear, then washed her face and took the sleeping pill the doctor had prescribed despite her earlier refusal. She needed sleep. Real sleep, not the fitful kind broken by nightmares. The pill worked. Emily slept for 9 hours straight and woke feeling almost human. No dreams she could remember. Small victory. Her phone showed 3 texts from Adrian, all time-stamped after midnight. Hope you got home safe. Sorry I had to leave. Call if you need anything. Emily typed a response. Slept through the night. Actual sleep, not nightmare roulette. Progress. The reply came instantly. That's great. How are you feeling? Less like death, more like someone who might survive medical school. Good. You have class this morning? Pathology at 9, then I'm free until afternoon. Lunch? You're going to get sick of me. Not possible. Same place as yesterday? Noon? Make it 12:30? Pathology runs long on Tuesdays. See you then. Pathology was better than the first day. Emily managed to focus on cellular abnormalities and disease processes without her mind wandering to basements and syringes. The professor called on her twice, and she answered correctly both times. Felt good. Felt normal. At 12:30, she walked into the same coffee shop and found Adrian already there. He looked tired, she noticed. Shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. Rough night? She asked, sitting down. Something like that. Want to talk about it? Not particularly. Okay. Emily accepted the coffee he slid across the table. Then tell me something good. What's the best thing that happened to you this week? Adrian's expression softened. This. Right now. Watching you walk in here looking more alive than you did yesterday. Emily's chest tightened. That's a cop-out answer. It's the truth. Then the truth is depressing, because if this is your highlight, your week must have been terrible. It's had its challenges. Such as? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then, someone I helped a while back is in trouble again. Different kind of trouble, but serious. And I'm trying to figure out how to fix it without making things worse. Can you fix it? I don't know yet. Emily reached across the table and took his hand. The gesture surprised her as much as it seemed to surprise him. You can't save everyone. I can try. And burn yourself out in the process? Adrian's fingers tightened around hers. Says the woman who went to class the day after being kidnapped. That's different. How? Because that's about me surviving. What you're doing, taking on everyone else's problems, that's about you not knowing when to stop. Look who's talking. Emily realized they were still holding hands. Neither of them moved to let go. We're both disasters, she said finally. Yeah, we really are. Good thing we found each other then. Adrian's smile was slow and genuine. Good thing. They had lunch, sandwiches neither of them really tasted, and talked about nothing important. Medical school gossip, Adrian's opinions on corporate merger strategies, whether cats or dogs made better pets, normal conversation between two people who were becoming friends. Except Emily wasn't sure friends was the right word anymore. Friends didn't look at each other the way Adrian looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Friends didn't feel their pulse skip when the other person laughed. Friends didn't hold hands across coffee shop tables and forget to let go. When lunch ended, Adrian walked her back toward campus. They took the long route, neither wanting to end the afternoon. "Can I ask you something?" Emily said. "Always. That first night when you got my text, you said you were coming from a late meeting. What kind of meeting happens at midnight that requires you to be on Route 47? Adrian's expression shuddered slightly. "The kind I can't talk about." "Because it's illegal?" "Because it's private." "There's a difference?" "Sometimes." Emily stopped walking. "Are you in danger? The thing you do, helping people, does it put you at risk?" "Sometimes," Adrian admitted. "That doesn't scare you? Not as much as not helping would." Emily searched his face. "Who hurt you? To make you like this?" Adrian's laugh was hollow. "That's a long story. I've got time. You have class in 2 hours, so give me the abbreviated version." They'd reached a small park near campus. Adrian led her to a bench and sat, staring at nothing for a long moment. "When I was 16, my mom got sick," he said finally. "Cancer. Stage 4. We didn't have money for the treatment she needed, and insurance wouldn't cover the experimental options. My dad tried everything. Loans, fundraisers, begging. Nothing worked." Emily's heart broke. "Adrian, she had 6 months. Could have had longer with the right treatment. Could have had years, but we couldn't afford years." His voice was flat, emotionless in the way of someone who'd told this story too many times. "She died on a Tuesday. I was sitting with her. She held my hand and told me not to be angry, that it wasn't anyone's fault. But it was someone's fault. The insurance company that denied her claim. The hospital that wouldn't treat her without payment. The system that decided her life wasn't worth saving because we couldn't pay for it." "What did you do?" "I got angry anyway. Dropped out of school, started working whatever jobs would take me. Security, mostly. Turned out I was good at it. Good at protecting people, at seeing danger before it arrived. Eventually that led to other opportunities. Better paying ones. Ones that let me help people like my mom. People the system failed." Emily understood now. "That's what you do. You help people who can't afford to help themselves. Among other things." "And the expensive suit? The luxury car? The connections to senators and prosecutors? Turns out helping people who can afford it funds helping people who can't." Adrian finally looked at her. "I'm not a saint, Emily. The work I do, some of it's questionable at best, but I made a choice a long time ago that I'd rather live in the gray than watch good people suffer because they don't have the right resources." Emily took his hand again. "Your mom would be proud. She'd probably tell me I'm doing too much, that I need to take care of myself too. She'd be right. So would you, if you said the same thing." Emily smiled. "I'm saying it." "I know." They sat in silence for a while, hands linked, watching students hurry past on their way to class. Emily felt something shifting between them, something deepening, turning from whatever this had been into something she couldn't quite name yet. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "Pharmacology waits for no one. Text me later?" "You're going to get tired of hearing from me." "Not possible." Adrian stood, pulling her up with him. For a moment they stood too close, his hand still holding hers, his eyes dark and unreadable. Emily's breath caught. "Adrian!" His phone rang. The moment shattered. Adrian checked the screen and swore softly. "I have to take this." "Go! It's fine." But it wasn't fine. Emily walked to class feeling like she'd almost touched something important and had it yanked away at the last second. The next few days fell into a pattern. Classes during the day, texts with Adrian in between, phone calls at night when the nightmares came. Her mother went back to Seattle after 2 weeks, satisfied that Emily was coping. Emily threw herself into studying with the kind of intensity that worried her classmates but kept her mind occupied. Mark's trial date was set, 3 months away. His lawyer was still fighting the charges, but Adrian's connections were holding firm. The prosecutor had brought in experts, compiled evidence, built a case so airtight that Mark's diminished capacity defense was looking weaker by the day. "They're confident," Detective Walsh told Emily over the phone. "This goes to trial. He's looking at 25 years minimum. And if he pleads out, we won't accept anything less than 15. 15 years. Not enough for what he'd done, but better than nothing." Emily threw herself into midterms with single-minded focus. Aced cardiovascular physiology. Pulled an A- in anatomy despite her struggles in lab. Scored in the top 10% on the pharmacology exam. You're crushing it, Jessica said after results posted. Seriously, how are you doing this? Spite, Emily said, and really good coffee. But the truth was Adrian. The late night calls that kept her grounded. The lunch dates that gave her something to look forward to. The texts that reminded her she wasn't alone. They were spending more time together. Study sessions where Adrian would work on his laptop while Emily memorized pathways and processes. Dinners that stretched into hours of conversation. Long walks through the city where they talked about everything and nothing. Emily's classmates noticed. So, who's the guy? Jessica asked one night while they were reviewing notes. What guy? The one who makes you smile at your phone, the one you're always texting, the mysterious Adrian from the news. Emily felt her face heat. We're friends. And I'm the Queen of England. We are. He helped me through a traumatic experience. Now we're close. That's normal. You light up when he texts you. That's not just close, that's something else. I don't light up. Jessica turned her laptop around, showing Emily her reflection in the camera. Text him right now and watch your face. Emily refused. That's ridiculous. Then prove me wrong. So Emily pulled out her phone and texted Adrian. Jessica thinks I have feelings for you. Tell her she's crazy. The response came within seconds. I can't tell her something that might not be true. Emily's breath caught. She must have made a face because Jessica started laughing. Oh my God, what did he say? Nothing. Something about contracts. Boring work stuff. You are the worst liar. Jessica leaned back. For what it's worth, I think it's good. You deserve someone who makes you happy. He's too complicated for happy. Complicated can be good. Means he's not boring. Emily thought about Adrian's past, his gray area work, the way he could make prosecutors jump with a single phone call. Complicated didn't begin to cover it. But Jessica was right about one thing. He did make her happy. Or at least he made her feel something other than fear and grief and the hollow exhaustion of trauma. That night, Adrian called at 11 instead of waiting for Emily to text first. Jessica says I light up when you message me, Emily said instead of hello. Do you? I don't know, maybe. Good. Good? Yeah, you should light up. You've spent too much time in the dark. Emily curled up on her bed, phone pressed to her ear. Are we going to talk about it? About what? About whatever this is. Between us. Silence on the other end, then, what do you want it to be? I don't know. Something more than friends, but I don't know what that looks like. You're still mostly a mystery to me. I know you take your coffee black and you lost your mom young and you help people for a living. But I don't know where you live or if you have siblings or what you do when you're not rescuing women from basements. I have an apartment downtown, Adrian said quietly. No siblings. And when I'm not working, I read, run, think too much. What do you read? Everything. Fiction, nonfiction, history, philosophy, whatever's interesting. Favorite book? Changes depending on my mood. Right now, probably The Count of Monte Cristo. The revenge one? The justice one. There's a difference. Emily smiled. Everything's about differences with you. Because differences matter. Tell me more. About your apartment, your life. The parts you don't show people. So Adrian did. Told her about the penthouse he'd bought 5 years ago and barely lived in. About the collection of books that lined every wall. About the piano he'd learned to play when he was 8 and still played when he couldn't sleep. About the scars on his ribs from a job that went wrong 3 years back. About the nightmares he got too, though his were different from hers. Emily listened and absorbed and felt like she was being given something precious. Trust. The real Adrian, not just the capable rescuer or the mysterious businessman. Your turn, Adrian said when he'd run out of confessions. Tell me something you haven't told anyone else. Emily thought about it. Sometimes I'm glad it happened. What? The kidnapping. I know that's messed up. I know I should just wish it never happened at all. But if it hadn't, I wouldn't have met you. And meeting you, that changed everything. Emily, I'm not done. I spend all this time trying to get back to normal, trying to be the person I was before. But what if that person was smaller? What if going through something terrible and coming out the other side made me bigger somehow, stronger? What if the worst thing that ever happened to me led to the best thing? Adrian was quiet for so long, Emily thought the call had dropped. "You're the best thing?" he finally asked. "Yeah, you are." "I don't know what to say to that." "You don't have to say anything." But Adrian's voice when he spoke was raw in a way she'd never heard before. "You're the best thing that's happened to me too. And I don't know what to do with that. We could figure it out together." "Emily, I don't know how to do this. Relationships, feelings, any of it. I'm good at protecting people, at solving problems. But this? I'm going to mess it up." "So mess it up. We'll figure it out as we go. You deserve better than someone figuring it out. I deserve someone who shows up, someone who keeps promises, someone who answers when I call." Emily's voice was steady. "That's you, Adrian. That's all you." She could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, could almost feel the war happening in his head, wanting this, wanting her but terrified of failing her. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay? Let's figure it out, together. But Emily, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If I screw this up, when I screw this up, you tell me. You don't just disappear. You give me a chance to fix it." "Deal. But same goes for you. I'm going to mess this up too. Medical school is insane. My trauma's still fresh. I'm probably going to have a breakdown at some point. Promise you won't run when it gets hard." "I don't run." "Then we're good." They talked for another 2 hours about nothing important, just the sound of each other's voices, the comfort of not being alone. When Emily finally hung up at 2 in the morning, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. This thing with Adrian, whatever it was becoming, felt like standing at the edge of something huge, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. She fell asleep with her phone in her hand and dreamed of dark eyes and steady hands and promises kept in the middle of the night. The call came at 4 in the morning on a Wednesday in March, 2 months after their conversation about figuring things out together. Emily was deep in a dreamless sleep when her phone started buzzing. She grabbed it without looking, assuming it was Adrian with insomnia again. "Hey," she mumbled, voice thick with sleep. "Ms. Carter?" Not Adrian. A woman's voice, professional and careful. "This is Detective Walsh. I'm sorry to wake you, but we have a situation." Emily sat up, suddenly alert. "What kind of situation?" "Mark Hendricks made bail an hour ago." The words didn't make sense. Emily's brain tried to process them and failed. "That's not possible. You said he was denied bail." "He was, but his family posted an appeal, and a different judge reviewed it, decided he wasn't a flight risk given his ties to the community." Walsh's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "We just got the notification. He was released 20 minutes ago." Emily's hands started shaking. "Where is he now?" "We don't know. He's wearing an ankle monitor and has strict orders to stay away from you, but I wanted you to know immediately. Are you safe where you are?" "I'm at my apartment. My roommate's here." "Good. Stay there. Lock the doors. I'm sending a patrol car to your building." "This is insane. He kidnapped me. He tried to—" Emily's voice broke. "How is he allowed to just walk free?" "The system's broken, Ms. Carter. I'm sorry, but we're doing everything we can to keep you safe." Emily ended the call and sat in the dark, her heart pounding. Mark was out there, walking around, free, while she was trapped in this endless nightmare of fear and legal bureaucracy. She called Adrian without thinking. He answered on the first ring, voice already alert. "What's wrong?" "Mark made bail." Silence. Then, "When?" 20 minutes ago. They just released him." "Where are you?" "My apartment. Walsh is sending a patrol car, but I'm coming over." "Adrian, it's 4 in the morning." "I don't care. Pack a bag. You're not staying there." "I can't just leave. I have class in 5 hours and—" "Emily?" His voice cut through her panic. "Pack a bag. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He hung up before she could argue. Emily sat frozen for a moment, then forced herself to move. She pulled out a duffel bag and started throwing in clothes, toiletries, textbooks. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Jessica emerged from her bedroom, hair wild, eyes worried. "What's going on? I heard you on the phone." "Mark's out. They let him out." "What? How?" "Different judge, appeal, I don't know." Emily zipped the bag with more force than necessary. "Adrian's coming to get me." "Where are you going?" "I have no idea." The patrol car arrived first, parked outside with lights off. Then Adrian's car pulled up 10 minutes later, a black SUV Emily had never seen before, not his usual sedan. He came up to the apartment, moving with purpose. His eyes scanned the space immediately, cataloging exits and vulnerabilities the same way he had in the farmhouse. "You ready?" he asked Emily. "I don't even know where we're going." "Somewhere safe. That's all that matters right now." Jessica hovered uncertainly. "Should I come too?" "You're not in danger," Adrian said, not unkindly. "Mark's fixation is on Emily, but keep your doors locked and call if you see anything unusual." Emily hugged Jessica quickly. "I'll text you." "You better." Adrian carried Emily's bag downstairs. The patrol officers nodded to him as they passed. Emily wondered what Detective Walsh had told them about Adrian, about his role in all this. The SUV was new, or at least new to her. Adrian loaded her bag in the back and held the passenger door open. "This isn't your car," Emily said. "I have several. This one's better suited for right now." Emily didn't ask what that meant. She climbed in and buckled up, watching her apartment building disappear as Adrian pulled away from the curb. They drove in silence for 20 minutes. Emily watched the city lights blur past, trying to calm her racing heart. Mark was out there somewhere, free. The thought kept looping through her mind on repeat. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. "My place." "Your apartment?" "Yeah. Top floor, security building, doorman who doesn't let anyone up without verification. Safest place I can think of short of a bunker." Emily had never been to Adrian's apartment. He'd mentioned it, described it even, but actually seeing where he lived felt significant somehow. Intimate. They pulled into an underground garage beneath a glass and steel tower in the financial district. Adrian swiped a keycard and the gate lifted. He parked in a spot marked Reserved Penthouse and grabbed Emily's bag. The elevator required another keycard. Adrian's hands were steady as he swiped it, but Emily could see the tension in his shoulders, the tight set of his jaw. "You're angry," she said. "Furious." "At me?" Adrian looked at her sharply. "Why would I be angry at you?" "I don't know. For calling you at 4 in the morning, for being a mess, for—" "Stop." He pressed the button for the top floor. "I'm angry at a system that lets a violent criminal walk free because his family has money and connections. I'm angry at a judge who looked at your case and decided he wasn't a threat. I'm angry that you have to live in fear because other people failed to do their jobs." The elevator rose smoothly, quickly. Emily watched the numbers climb. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know. What if he comes after me again?" "He won't get the chance." "You can't promise that." Adrian turned to face her fully. "Yes, I can, because I'm not letting you out of my sight until he's back in custody where he belongs." The elevator doors opened directly into Adrian's apartment. Emily stepped out and stopped. The penthouse was nothing like she'd imagined. She'd expected sleek and modern, all glass and sharp edges. Instead, it was warm. Lived in. Books everywhere, just like he'd said, lining the walls, stacked on tables, marking his life in a way that felt intensely personal. The furniture was comfortable rather than stylish. Deep leather sofas, worn rugs, a massive wooden desk covered in papers. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city stretching out below, but the curtains were heavy enough to block it all out when needed. And in the corner, exactly as he'd described, a black grand piano. "This is beautiful," Emily breathed. Adrian set her bag down. "Guest rooms down that hall. Second door on the right. Bathrooms attached." "Adrian, get some sleep. We'll figure out the rest in the morning." But Emily didn't move toward the guest room. "I don't want to be alone right now." Something flickered across Adrian's expression. "Emily, I'm not asking for anything except not to be alone. Please." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay. Come on." He led her to his bedroom, another surprise of warmth over style. More books, a bed that looked actually slept in rather than decorative, windows that faced east toward the coming sunrise. Adrian gestured to the bed. "Take it. I'll be on the couch." "That's ridiculous. It's your bed. And you're my guest." "Adrian, it's a king-size bed. We can share it without—" Emily stopped, suddenly aware of how that sounded. "I mean, like adults. Platonically." "Platonically," Adrian repeated, something almost amused in his tone despite the circumstances. "Yes, two people sleeping in the same bed because one of them just got terrifying news and doesn't want to be alone in a strange place. Very platonic." Adrian's smile was brief but genuine. Okay. Emily used the bathroom to change into sleep clothes while Adrian did the same in another room. When she emerged, he was already in bed on the far side, leaving her plenty of space. He changed into a t-shirt and sweatpants, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. Emily climbed in on her side, hyper-aware of the heat radiating from him, the steady sound of his breathing. "Thank you," she said into the darkness. "For what? For coming to get me, for not making me feel stupid for being scared. You're not stupid. Fear is rational response to threat. Very clinical. I'm trying to be reassuring. You're doing okay." They lay in silence. Emily could hear the city outside, muffled and distant, could feel her heart slowly returning to normal rhythm, could sense Adrian's presence beside her like an anchor. "I can hear you thinking," Adrian said. "Sorry." "Don't be. What's on your mind?" "Everything." "Nothing. The fact that we've known each other for 2 months and this is the first time we've been in the same bed. Technically, the second. I held you in that farmhouse after you collapsed. That doesn't count. I was having a breakdown." "Fair point." Emily rolled onto her side to face him. In the dim light from the windows, she could just make out his profile. "Are we doing this wrong? The whole figuring it out together thing?" "What do you mean?" "I don't know what we are. Friends? More than friends? We talk every day. You know more about me than most people. I trust you with my life. Literally. But we've never even gone on an actual date." Adrian turned to look at her. "Do you want to go on a date?" "I don't know. Maybe. It seems weird to do it backwards. Most people date first, then develop feelings, then deal with trauma together. We did it all out of order." "We're not most people." "No, we're really not." Adrian reached out slowly, giving her time to move away if she wanted. When she didn't, his hand settled on her cheek, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "I don't know how to do this right. The dating, the relationship, any of it. But I know I want to try. With you." Emily's breath caught. "Yeah?" "Yeah. Even though I'm a disaster who calls you at 4 in the morning and has nightmares and comes with a side of legal drama, especially because of that. You're real, Emily. No games, no pretending. You need something, you ask for it. You're scared, you say so. That's rare. Or I'm just too traumatized to have a filter anymore." "That too." Emily laughed despite everything. "We're both disasters." "Good thing we found each other then." She closed the distance between them without thinking, pressing her forehead to his. Adrian went still, his hand on her face, his breathing careful. "Is this okay?" Emily whispered. "Yeah, this is okay." They stayed like that, foreheads touching, breathing the same air, until Emily finally felt safe enough to sleep. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. Adrian was gone from the bed, but she could hear movement in the kitchen. Emily checked her phone. 8 messages from Jessica asking if she was okay. 3 from Detective Walsh with updates on Mark's location, still at his parents' house, ankle monitor active, no violations yet, and 1 from her anatomy professor asking where she was. She'd missed class. First time all semester. Emily pulled on jeans and followed the coffee smell. Adrian was at the stove making eggs and toast with the kind of quiet competence he brought to everything. "You cook," Emily said. "Badly, but yes." He glanced over. "How'd you sleep?" "Better than I expected. You?" "Fine." He was lying. Emily could see the exhaustion around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders that said he'd barely slept at all. "You stayed awake watching for threats, didn't you?" Adrian didn't deny it. "Old habits." "Adrian, I'm fine. Eat breakfast. Then we need to talk about what happens next." They ate at his kitchen island, looking out over the city. Emily felt disconnected from the world below. All those people going about their normal lives while hers remained suspended in this strange limbo. "I called some people this morning," Adrian said. "Friends in the legal system. Mark's bail is being challenged. They're filing an emergency motion to revoke it based on victim intimidation. But he hasn't contacted me. He doesn't have to. The act of being released while you're still in danger constitutes intimidation. It's a technicality, but it might work. And if it doesn't, then we adapt. You stay here until the trial. I'll hire private security if needed. We make sure he can't get near you." Emily set down her fork. "I can't hide in your apartment for 3 months." Why not? Because I have a life. Classes, exams, clinical rotations starting next semester. I can't put everything on hold because Mark's lawyer found a sympathetic judge. Emily, I'm not letting him win, Adrian. I've already given him too much. My peace of mind, my sense of safety, my ability to walk into a basement without panicking. I'm not giving him my future too. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Okay, then we figure out how to keep you safe while you live your life, but you have to promise me you'll be careful. No walking alone, no late nights in empty buildings, no taking chances. I promise. And you stay here, at least until the bail situation is resolved. Emily wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle her own apartment, her own life. But the truth was, she felt safer here, in Adrian's space, with his steady presence and his promise to keep her protected. Okay, she agreed. Over the next week, they fell into a routine. Adrian drove Emily to class in the morning and picked her up after. She studied at his dining table while he worked at his desk. They ate dinner together, watched movies she'd never seen, talked about everything from cellular biology to philosophy to whether the best pizza required pineapple. Jessica brought by clothes and textbooks, her expression knowing when she saw how comfortable Emily looked in Adrian's space. "So you're living with him now," Jessica said when Adrian was out of the room. "Temporarily, until Mark's back in custody." "Uh-huh. And where exactly are you sleeping?" Emily felt her face heat. "That's not relevant." "Oh my God, you're sharing a bed. Platonically." "Right, platonically. Like two people who are totally not in love with each other." "We're not—" "I don't—" Emily stopped. "It's complicated." "It's not, though. You like him. He clearly likes you. What's complicated about that?" "Everything. The way we met, the trauma, the fact that I still don't entirely know what he does for a living or why senators return his phone calls." Jessica shrugged. "So ask him." That night, Emily did. They were on the couch, Emily tucked against Adrian's side while some documentary about ocean conservation played on the screen. It had become their default position over the past week, close but not quite crossing the line into something more. "Can I ask you something?" Emily said. "Always." "What exactly do you do?" The real answer, not the vague, "I help people" thing. Adrian was quiet long enough that Emily thought he might not answer. Then, "I solve problems for people who can't solve them through conventional means. Sometimes that's legal work, connecting them with the right lawyers, funding cases that matter. Sometimes it's less legal, finding evidence that wouldn't be admissible in court, but can pressure the right settlement, applying pressure in places the system can't reach. That sounds like vigilante justice. It's gray area justice. The system fails people every day. Good people who deserve help but can't afford it or don't have the right connections. I fill in the gaps." "By doing what exactly?" "Whatever needs doing, within reason. I don't hurt innocent people. Don't break laws that would land my clients in jail. But I'm willing to bend things that need bending." Emily processed that. "Is it dangerous?" "Sometimes. Not usually. Most of what I do is just knowing who to call and what pressure points to push. But sometimes it is dangerous." "Yeah. The scars on your ribs, the ones you told me about. How did you get those?" Adrian's arm tightened around her slightly. "Job that went sideways. Guy I was pressuring didn't appreciate it. Sent some friends to deliver a message." "Adrian, it was 3 years ago. I'm more careful now." "That's not reassuring. It's honest." Emily tilted her head to look up at him. "Does it scare you? The danger?" "Not as much as it should, probably." "What does scare you?" Adrian's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across it. "Failing people who are counting on me. Becoming so focused on the mission that I forget why I started. Losing the parts of myself that still care about individual lives instead of just outcomes." "And me?" Emily asked quietly. "Do I scare you?" "Terrify me." "Why?" Because you make me want things I stopped letting myself want a long time ago. Normal things, partnership, someone to come home to, a life that's not just work and obligation." His hand found hers, fingers interlacing. "You make me hope, Emily, and hope is the most dangerous thing I've let myself feel in years." Emily's throat tightened. "I scare myself too." "How?" "How much I've come to need you, how much I trust you. How completely you've become part of my life in just 2 months." She squeezed his hand. What happens when the trial's over? When Mark's in prison and the threat is gone and I don't have a reason to be here anymore? Do you need a reason? Don't I? Adrian shifted so he could look at her properly. I don't want you here because you're scared and I'm safe. I want you here because you want to be here. Because this, us, whatever we're becoming, is something you want independent of Mark Hendricks and trials and threats. Is that what you want? Yes. The simple certainty in his voice made Emily's heart race. I want that too. But I'm scared I'm confusing gratitude with something more. Scared I'm trauma bonding instead of actually falling for you. Are you? Falling for me? Emily took a shaky breath. Yeah, I think I am. Maybe I have been since that first phone call when you promised to come and actually meant it. Adrian's smile was slow and devastating. Good. Because I've been falling for you since I heard your voice in that basement and knew I'd do anything to keep you safe. Even share your space with a med student who steals your coffee and leaves anatomy textbooks all over your dining table? Especially that. Emily kissed him before she could overthink it. Just leaned up and pressed her lips to his, soft and tentative and terrified. Adrian went still for half a second. Then his hand came up to cup her face, and he kissed her back with a gentleness that made her chest ache. No rush, no pressure. Just the slow exploration of someone learning something precious. When they broke apart, Emily was breathing hard. Was that okay? She asked. That was perfect. I have, but not like... Emily fumbled for words. This feels different, important. It is important. Adrian's thumb traced her cheekbone. Which is why we go slow. No rushing, no pressure. We figure this out at whatever pace feels right. What if I don't want to go slow? Then we'll figure that out too. They kissed again, longer this time. Emily's hands fisted in Adrian's shirt, pulling him closer. His arms wrapped around her, solid and sure, and for the first time in months, Emily felt like maybe everything would actually be okay. The emergency motion to revoke Mark's bail was denied 3 days later. Detective Walsh called with the news, her voice tight with frustration. I'm sorry, Emily. The judge didn't see sufficient cause. Mark's staying out until trial. Emily took the news with a strange calm. She'd expected it somehow. The system had failed her before. Why would it suddenly start working now? How long until trial, she asked. 6 weeks, maybe 8 if they request another continuance. Okay, thanks for letting me know. She hung up and found Adrian watching her from across the apartment. He's staying out, Emily said. I heard. I'm tired of being scared, tired of letting him control my life from a distance, tired of all of it. Adrian crossed to her, taking her hands. What do you need? I need to stop hiding. I need to go back to my apartment, my life, my routine. I need to prove to myself that he doesn't get to win. Emily, I'm not stupid. I'll be careful. But I can't live in fear forever, Adrian. That's not living. That's just surviving. And I'm done just surviving. Adrian studied her face for a long moment. Okay, but we do this smart, security system for your apartment. You check in regularly, and I'm a phone call away, day or night. Any sign of trouble, I call you. I know. Promise me. I promise. Emily moved back to her apartment the next day. Adrian helped her install new locks, a security camera, motion sensors on the windows. It was probably overkill, but it made them both feel better. That first night alone was hard. Emily lay in her own bed, in her own room, and felt the absence of Adrian's presence like a physical ache. She'd gotten used to falling asleep beside him, to the sound of his breathing, to the knowledge that someone was there if the nightmares came. Her phone buzzed at midnight. You okay? Adrian? Can't sleep. Want company? It's midnight. And? 20 minutes later, Adrian showed up with coffee and the complete lack of apology. They curled up on Emily's couch and talked until dawn. Then he drove her to class before heading to whatever meeting had him in a suit at 8 in the morning. It became their new pattern. Days apart while Emily went to class and Adrian worked. Evenings together, either at her place or his. Nights where one of them couldn't sleep and called the other, distance be damned. They were dating, Emily supposed, though it looked nothing like any relationship she'd had before. There were no fancy dinners or planned outings. Just Chinese takeout and anatomy textbooks. Late-night conversations and early morning coffee runs. The slow building of something real and solid and entirely their own. The trial date was set for May 15th, 6 weeks away. Emily threw herself into studying for finals, grateful for the distraction. Adrian threw himself into making sure the prosecution had everything they needed to put Mark away for good. "Stop working on my case," Emily told him one night when she found him on the phone with another lawyer at 11 p.m. "This is what I do. You're supposed to be focusing on your actual clients. You are my actual client. I'm your girlfriend. There's a difference." Adrian smiled at the word girlfriend. They'd been dancing around labels for weeks. "So now I can't help my girlfriend?" "You can help. You're just not allowed to make it your entire life. You have other people who need you too. They can wait." "Adrian," he pulled her into his lap, cutting off her protest with a kiss. "Stop trying to minimize your own importance. You're allowed to need help. You're allowed to let me give it. I just don't want to be the only thing you care about. That's too much pressure." "You're not the only thing. You're just the most important thing." Emily didn't know what to say to that, so she kissed him instead, pouring everything she couldn't put into words into the press of her lips against his. Finals came and went. Emily aced most of them, pulled a B+ on the one she'd been dreading. Good enough. Better than expected given everything. The semester ended. Summer break stretched ahead. No classes for 3 months, though Emily had already signed up for a research position at the university hospital. Something to keep her busy, something to remind her why she wanted to be a doctor in the first place. Mark's trial was 2 weeks away. Detective Walsh called with updates. The prosecution was solid. They had evidence, testimony, expert witnesses. Mark's diminished capacity defense was falling apart under scrutiny. Everything pointed toward a conviction. "You're going to have to testify," Walsh told Emily. "Face him in court. Are you ready for that?" Emily thought about it, about seeing Mark again, about telling her story to a room full of strangers, about reliving the worst night of her life in explicit detail. "Yeah," she said. "I'm ready." She wasn't sure she believed it, but she'd figure it out when the time came. That night, lying in Adrian's arms in his bed, they'd stopped pretending the whole separate apartments thing made sense. Emily asked the question that had been nagging at her for weeks. "What happens after? When Mark's in prison and the trial's over and I don't have this hanging over me anymore?" "What do you want to happen?" Adrian asked. "I don't know. I want to finish medical school. Start my residency. Actually become a doctor instead of just a student who's good at memorizing things." "Okay. And I want you, in whatever form that takes. But I don't know what that looks like when my life isn't in crisis mode." Adrian was quiet, his hand tracing patterns on her shoulder. "I want you too. Crisis or not. Medical school, residency, 80-hour weeks, and impossible schedules. I want all of it." "That's a lot to commit to." "I know. We've only been together 4 months. That's not very long in the grand scheme of relationships." "It's long enough to know what I want." Emily tilted her head to look at him. "And what do you want?" "This, you. A life that's not just work and obligation. Coming home to someone who understands why I do what I do but calls me out when I'm doing too much. Someone who makes me want to be better than I am." "I don't make you better. You're already good. You make me want to be the person you see when you look at me. That's not the same thing." Emily kissed him slowly, deeply, trying to convey everything she felt and couldn't quite articulate. When they broke apart, Adrian's eyes were dark and intense. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know it's fast and probably too soon and we're still figuring this out, but I need you to know. I love you, Emily Carter. Wrong number and all." Emily's eyes filled. "I love you too. Even though you're complicated and occasionally terrifying and I still don't entirely understand your tax returns." Adrian laughed. "My tax returns are deliberately confusing. It's a feature, not a bug." "Of course they are." They fell asleep tangled together, the city lights filtering through the windows, the future uncertain, but theirs to shape. Whatever came next, trial, testimony, verdict, they'd face it together. 2 weeks later, Emily walked into the courthouse holding Adrian's hand and faced the man who'd tried to destroy her. She told her story to the jury with a steady voice, answered the defense attorney's questions without flinching, looked Mark Hendricks in the eye and refused to look away. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. 25 years, no possibility of parole for 50. Emily walked out of that courthouse a different person than she'd walked in. Lighter, somehow. Free. Adrian was waiting on the steps, his expression careful. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I can breathe again." Emily took his hand. "Like maybe we can start figuring out what comes next." "What do you want to come next?" Emily looked at this man who'd answered a wrong number and changed her life, who'd promised to come and had kept that promise every single day since, who'd helped her find her strength when she thought it was gone forever. "Everything," she said. "I want everything." Adrian smiled. "Then let's go get it." They walked down the courthouse steps together, hand in hand, into whatever came next. It wouldn't be easy. Emily had 2 more years of medical school, then residency, brutal hours and impossible demands. Adrian had his work, his complicated life in the gray areas between legal and not, but they had each other. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like enough. More than enough. It felt like everything. 3 years later, Emily stood in the hallway of County Memorial Hospital, wearing scrubs that still felt too official, too real. Her resident badge hung from a lanyard around her neck, the photo making her look younger than 27, more hopeful than she usually let herself feel. It was 2 in the morning. She'd been on shift for 18 hours. Her feet hurt, her back ached, and she'd consumed enough coffee to fuel a small aircraft. But when her pager went off with a trauma code, she ran. Because this was what she'd worked for, what she'd survived for. The ambulance bay doors burst open and paramedics rushed in with a gurney. Emily caught fragments of the report as they moved. 23-year-old female assault victim found locked in a storage unit. Emily's steps faltered, just for a second. Then her training kicked in and she was moving again, falling into step beside the gurney. The woman was conscious but barely responsive, her eyes glazed with shock. She had bruises on her wrists, dirt under her fingernails, the hollow look of someone who'd seen something they'd never unsee. Emily knew that look, had worn it herself once. "Hi," Emily said gently, taking the woman's hand. "My name's Dr. Carter. You're safe now. We're going to take care of you." The woman's eyes focused slightly. He said, no one would come. "Someone always comes," Emily said, and meant it. "You're not alone anymore." They worked on her for 2 hours. IV fluids, rape kit, CT scan to check for internal injuries. The whole time, Emily stayed close, explaining every procedure, making sure the woman knew what was happening and why. "You're good at this," one of the nurses said quietly while they waited for imaging results. "The trauma cases, you have a way of making them feel safe." Emily thought about Adrian's voice on the phone that night, steady and certain, about how he'd made her feel like survival was possible when everything seemed hopeless. "Someone did the same for me once," she said. "I'm just passing it forward." By the time the woman was stable and admitted to a room, Emily's shift was technically over. She stayed anyway, sitting with her until the police arrived, until her sister showed up, until she wasn't alone anymore. When Emily finally left the hospital, dawn was breaking over the city. She was exhausted down to her bones. But there was something else too, something that felt like purpose. Her phone buzzed as she walked to her car. "How was your shift?" "Adrian. Long, hard, important." Emily climbed into her car, a used sedan she'd bought with her own money, proud of that small independence, even though Adrian had offered to buy her something newer. "Helped a woman who reminded me of myself 3 years ago." "You okay?" "Yeah. Tired, but okay. You up already or still up from last night?" "Still up. Conference call ran late, then I couldn't sleep." "Want company?" "Always." Emily drove to Adrian's penthouse, still his place, though she kept most of her clothes there now. They talked about officially moving in together, but between her insane schedule and his unpredictable work, they'd fallen into a pattern that worked. Her apartment for when she needed space, his place for when she needed him. She found Adrian at his desk, paperwork spread out, looking every bit as exhausted as she felt. He stood when she entered, pulling her into a hug that felt like coming home. "You smell like hospital," he said against her hair. "You smell like coffee and stress. We're a matched set." Adrian laughed, the sound tired but genuine. "Come on, you need sleep." They stumbled to bed fully clothed, too tired to bother changing. Emily curled into Adrian's side, his heartbeat steady under her ear. "Tell me about her," Adrian said quietly. "The woman who reminded you of yourself." So Emily did. Told him about the fear in the woman's eyes, The way she'd flinched at sudden movements, the quiet strength it took to keep breathing when everything felt broken. "Did you tell her?" Adrian asked. "That you'd been through something similar?" No, that's not what she needed to hear. She needed to know she was safe, that people cared, that this wasn't the end of her story. Emily paused. "But I stayed with her until her sister came, made sure she wasn't alone." "That's what you did for me?" "Made sure I wasn't alone." Adrian's arm tightened around her. "You would have survived without me." "Maybe, but I wouldn't have wanted to. You gave me a reason to fight instead of just survive." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, the city waking up around them. Emily's residency was brutal in ways medical school hadn't prepared her for. 36-hour shifts, life and death decisions made on no sleep and too much caffeine, patients who lived and patients who didn't, and learning to carry both without breaking. Adrian was her constant through all of it. He showed up at the hospital with food when she forgot to eat, listened to her process the bad days without trying to fix them, celebrated the good ones like they were miracles. And maybe they were. Every patient who walked out healthy, every life saved, every moment she proved that Mark hadn't broken her, hadn't stolen her future. 6 months into her residency, Emily got a call from Detective Walsh. "Thought you'd want to know," Walsh said. "Mark Hendricks was denied parole again, 3rd time. How long until he can apply again?" 5 years minimum. And between you and me, with his disciplinary record in prison, I don't see him getting approved anytime soon. Emily felt something loosen in her chest. She hadn't realized she'd been carrying the tension until it was gone. "Thank you for letting me know." "You doing okay, Emily? I know the anniversary's coming up." The anniversary. 4 years since that night in the farmhouse. Emily had tried not to think about it, but dates had a way of sneaking up on you. "I'm okay," she said. "Better than okay, actually. I'm exactly where I want to be." And it was true. The nightmares still came sometimes, but less frequently. She could go into basements without panicking now, though she still preferred taking the stairs. The scars were there, physical and emotional, but they didn't define her anymore. That evening, Emily came home to find Adrian cooking dinner. Actual dinner, not just takeout or something microwaved. He was terrible at it, had always been terrible at it, but he kept trying. "What's the occasion?" Emily asked, kissing his cheek. "Does there need to be an occasion for me to feed my girlfriend?" "When the girlfriend is on call tomorrow, and you know she won't have time to eat?" "Yes." Adrian smiled. "Walsh called me too. Figured you might need a good meal and better company." "The company's debatable. The meal—" Emily peered into the pot on the stove. "Is that supposed to be pasta or abstract art?" "It's supposed to be edible. The bar is low." They ate Adrian's slightly burned pasta and talked about everything except the anniversary. Emily told him about the appendectomy she'd assisted with that morning. Adrian told her about a case he'd just taken on, a woman whose ex-husband was using custody battles to continue his abuse. "Can you help her?" Emily asked. "I'm going to try." "She deserves better than what the system's giving her." Emily studied him across the table. 4 years together, and he still surprised her sometimes. The way he cared so fiercely about strangers, the way he used his resources to fight battles most people didn't even know were happening. "I've been thinking," Emily said carefully, "about your work, about what you do." Adrian set down his fork. "Okay. You help people who fall through the cracks, who can't get justice through normal channels. But it's all reactive. You wait for people to come to you with problems that are already disasters. That's generally how crisis intervention works, yes. What if it didn't have to be? What if there was a way to catch people before they fell through the cracks?" Adrian leaned back, interested now. "What are you thinking?" Emily had been turning this over for weeks, ever since the woman in the emergency room, ever since she'd realized how many people ended up in her trauma bay because they hadn't had help soon enough. "A foundation," she said. "Non-profit, something that connects people in crisis with resources before it becomes life or death. Legal help, safe housing, medical care, whatever they need, like what you do, but bigger, more organized. That would take serious funding." "You have serious funding. Emily, I'm not asking you to bankroll it alone, but you have connections. You know people who could help. And She took a breath. "I want to do more than patch people up after they're already broken. I want to stop them from breaking in the first place." Adrian was quiet, his expression thoughtful. This is about more than just helping people, isn't it? This is about the farmhouse. Maybe? Probably. Is that a bad reason? No, it's the best reason. Adrian reached across the table, taking her hand. Tell me more. What would this foundation look like? They talked late into the night, sketching out ideas on napkins and Adrian's expensive legal pads, a hotline for people in crisis, partnerships with shelters and legal aid organizations, medical care for those who couldn't afford it, resources for victims of assault, abuse, trafficking. We'd need staff, Adrian said, social workers, lawyers, medical professionals. I could work part-time once I'm done with residency. Emily, you'll be working 80-hour weeks. So I'll work 100-hour weeks. People do it. Adrian gave her a look. You're already burning out. I'm fine. You fell asleep standing up in the shower last week. That was one time. It was 3 times. Emily couldn't argue with that. Okay, so maybe I'm a little tired, but this is important, Adrian. We could actually make a difference. Real, measurable difference in people's lives. We already do make a difference. But we could make a bigger one. Adrian studied her, and Emily saw the moment he decided. Saw him shift from skeptical to committed, the way he did when something became a mission instead of just an idea. Okay, he said. Let's do it. Starting the foundation was harder than Emily had anticipated. The paperwork alone was staggering. 501c3 applications, board member requirements, bylaws, and operating agreements. Adrian handled most of it, calling in favors and cutting through red tape with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Have you? Emily asked one night while they reviewed incorporation documents. Done this before? Started a nonprofit? No, but I've helped other people do it. The process is familiar. They assembled a board of directors, lawyers and social workers and advocates who believed in the mission, found office space in a building Adrian owned, getting a favorable lease that made Emily suspicious about exactly how favorable. Did you buy this building specifically for the foundation? She demanded. I bought it 6 months ago as an investment. The foundation is just good timing. Adrian. What? It's a sound business decision. Emily kissed him to shut him up, which had become her go-to strategy when he was being impossible. The foundation officially launched 8 months later. They called it Second Chance Initiative because that's what it was. A second chance for people who thought they'd run out of options. The response was overwhelming. Within the first month, they'd fielded 300 calls. Women fleeing abuse, kids aging out of foster care with nowhere to go, people who'd been assaulted and couldn't afford lawyers or therapy or time off work to heal. Emily found herself working the crisis line between shifts at the hospital, talking people through their worst moments, connecting them with resources. It was exhausting and heartbreaking and exactly what she needed to be doing. You're going to burn out, Jessica warned when she visited Emily at the foundation's office. You're working 2 full-time jobs. I'm fine. You look like death. Thanks. You look great too. Jessica sat across from her, expression serious. I'm worried about you, Em. You've been going nonstop for 4 years. Medical school, residency, now this. When do you rest? I rest plenty. You sleep 4 hours a night. That's standard for residents. It's not standard for humans. Even Adrian's worried, and he works almost as much as you do. Emily set down the file she'd been reviewing. What did Adrian say? That you're amazing and terrifying, and he's never seen anyone work as hard as you do. Also that he's scared you're going to collapse, and he won't know how to put you back together. Emily's chest tightened. He said that? Not in those exact words, but yeah, basically. That night, Emily found Adrian in his study, working late as usual. She'd learned to read his moods by now, the set of his shoulders, the tension in his jaw. Tonight he looked tired but focused, the way he got when he was solving a problem. Jessica says you're worried about me, Emily said from the doorway. Adrian looked up, unsurprised. Jessica has a big mouth. Is it true? That I'm worried? Yeah. You're running yourself ragged, Emily. Something's going to give. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're operating on fumes and stubbornness. Adrian stood, crossing to her. I get it. I understand the drive. But you can't help other people if you destroy yourself in the process. Says the man who works 18-hour days. I'm a hypocrite. Doesn't make me wrong. Emily leaned into him, letting him support her weight. I just want to make a difference. Want to prove that what happened to me wasn't for nothing. You've already proven that. You're a doctor. You save lives every day. The foundation is helping dozens of people every week. You've done more in 4 years than most people do in a lifetime. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does. But that doesn't mean you have to kill yourself trying to save everyone. Emily pulled back to look at him. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just terrified of losing you to burnout or exhaustion or both. You're not going to lose me. Promise? Emily thought about it, really thought about it. About the pace she'd been keeping, the way she'd been using work to avoid processing trauma. About how she'd turned helping others into a way to avoid helping herself. I'll try to slow down, she said finally. Cut back my hours at the foundation, focus on residency and not taking every single shift I'm offered. That's all I'm asking. They stood there in his study, holding each other, and Emily realized this was what healing actually looked like. Not grand gestures or perfect recovery, just small choices to take care of herself. To let someone else help carry the weight. Emily cut her foundation hours in half, started actually using her days off instead of volunteering for extra shifts. Went to therapy, something she'd been avoiding for years, convinced she could handle everything herself. Her therapist was a woman in her 50s named Dr. Reeves, who didn't pull punches. You've been using achievement to avoid feeling, Dr. Reeves said during their third session. That's not Emily. You went through something traumatic. Instead of processing it, you threw yourself into medical school, then residency, then started a nonprofit. All worthy pursuits, but also very convenient distractions. Emily wanted to argue, couldn't. What am I supposed to feel? She asked quietly. Whatever comes up, anger, fear, grief for the person you were before it happened, relief that you survived, all of it. So Emily started feeling, started letting herself be angry at Mark, at the system that had failed her, at the judge who'd let him out on bail, started acknowledging the fear that still lived in her bones, the way she still checked locks twice and avoided basements when she could, and started feeling grateful too. For Adrian, who'd answered a wrong number and changed her life, for the second chance she'd been given, for the work she got to do and the people she got to help. 2 years into her residency, Emily came home to find Adrian sitting on the couch looking uncharacteristically nervous. What's wrong? She asked immediately. Nothing's wrong, I have something to show you. He pulled out his laptop and opened a file. Emily sat beside him, confused as images loaded. It was the farmhouse. The one where Mark had held her. Except it didn't look like the same place. Someone had renovated it completely. The collapsed barn was rebuilt. The house itself was painted and restored, the broken windows replaced, the rotting porch rebuilt. I don't understand, Emily said. Why are you showing me this? I bought it, Adrian said quietly. 6 months ago. Had it completely renovated. I've been trying to figure out what to do with it. Emily stared at the screen. You bought the place where I was kidnapped. I know it sounds crazy, but I couldn't stand the idea of it just sitting there, rotting, a monument to the worst night of your life. So I bought it. Made it into something else. What are you planning to do with it? Adrian turned to face her fully. I want to turn it into a safe house. Part of the foundation. A place for people fleeing abuse or violence. Somewhere they can stay while we help them get back on their feet. Emily couldn't breathe. Adrian, you don't have to be okay with this. If it's too much, if it brings up too many bad memories, we sell it and find somewhere else. But I keep thinking about what you said, about turning trauma into something meaningful. This place tried to destroy you. I want to turn it into something that saves people instead. Emily looked at the photos, at the house that had been her prison, transformed into something hopeful, a place of fear becoming a place of refuge. Can we go see it? She asked. They drove out the next weekend. Emily's hands shook as they turned onto Route 47, past Miller's Creek, toward the farmhouse that still haunted her nightmares sometimes. But when they pulled up, it really was different. The house was warm yellow instead of dingy white. The barn was solid and beautiful, converted into additional living space. The whole property looked cared for, loved even. Adrian parked but didn't move to get out. We can leave if this is too much. I need to go inside, Emily said. The front door opened into a completely new space. Hardwood floors where there'd been rotting carpet, big windows letting in light, a kitchen that looked functional and welcoming. Nothing remained of the place Mark had brought her, except the basement door. Emily stared at it, her heart pounding. "We can board it up," Adrian said quickly. "Turn it into just foundation. You never have to go down there." But Emily was already moving toward the door. She opened it and looked down the stairs. They'd been replaced. New wood, better lighting. The basement itself was transformed into a bedroom suite, bright and airy with large windows that had been cut into the foundation. Nothing remained of the dark hole where she'd spent those hours waiting to die. Emily walked down the stairs slowly, stood in the space that had held her terror and saw only potential now. A place where someone else could feel safe. "This is perfect," she whispered. Adrian came down behind her. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Emily turned to him. "You took the worst place I've ever been and turned it into something that will help people. I don't even have words for what that means." "You don't have to." Emily kissed him, hard and grateful, and full of love for this man who solved problems in the most unexpected ways. They opened the safe house 3 months later, named it Haven House because that's what it was, a haven for people running from danger. Emily helped interview the house managers, train the staff, set up the protocols for intake, and when the first residents moved in, a woman and her 2 kids fleeing domestic violence, Emily was there to welcome them. "You're safe here," she told the woman. "I promise." The woman looked around the bright, clean space. "How can you be sure?" Emily thought about Adrian's voice on the phone, steady and certain, about the promise he'd made and kept, about how one person showing up could change everything. Because people who care built this place, and we're not going anywhere. Emily finished her residency 2 years later at the top of her program. She had job offers from 3 major hospitals, all prestigious, all offering significant salaries. She turned them all down. Instead, she took a position at County Memorial's Trauma Center, the same hospital where she'd done her residency. It paid less, but it was where she wanted to be, where she could help the people who needed it most. Adrian understood without her having to explain. That was the thing about them after 6 years together. They'd learned each other's languages, knew when to push and when to support, when to challenge and when to just hold on. They got engaged on a random Tuesday in April. No grand gesture, no elaborate plan. Adrian just looked at her over breakfast and said, "Marry me." Emily, halfway through her coffee, nearly choked. "What?" "Marry me. I know we said we'd wait until you finished residency, but I don't want to wait anymore. Marry me, Emily." "That's the worst proposal I've ever heard." "It's the only proposal you've ever heard. Still the worst." "Is that a no?" Emily set down her coffee and took his hand. "It's a yes, you idiot. Obviously, it's a yes." Adrian's smile was brighter than she'd ever seen it. "Yeah? Yeah, but we're telling people you did something more romantic than asking me over lukewarm coffee. I can do romantic. Give me 5 minutes and Adrian, shut up and kiss me." So he did. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at Haven House. The renovated barn made a perfect venue, and there was something right about starting their marriage in a place they'd transformed together. Emily's mother cried through the entire ceremony. Jessica was maid of honor and made a speech about wrong numbers and right people that had everyone laughing and crying. Detective Walsh came, and Dr. Reeves, and half of Emily's residency class. Adrian's side was smaller. He'd never been good at keeping people close. But the people who were there mattered. Colleagues who'd become friends, clients who'd become family. The woman Emily had helped in the ER 4 years ago, who now volunteered at the foundation. When they exchanged vows, Emily looked at Adrian and saw her whole future. The man who'd answered when she called, who'd kept showing up every day since, who'd turned her worst nightmare into something beautiful. "I promise to answer when you call," she said, echoing the vow they'd made to each other years ago. "Day or night, crisis or just can't sleep, I'm here." "I promise the same," Adrian said, his voice steady. "Always." They kissed to applause and celebration, and Emily felt something settle deep in her chest. This was home. Not a place, but a person. This complicated, intense, wonderful man who'd crashed into her life at exactly the right moment. Life didn't magically become perfect after the wedding. Emily still worked too much. Adrian still took on cases that kept him up at night. They fought about stupid things like whose turn it was to do laundry, and serious things like how to balance their careers with wanting a future that included more than just work. But they figured it out. Together. 5 years after the wedding, 10 years after that night in the farmhouse, Emily stood in the renovated barn at Haven House for the Foundation's anniversary celebration. The space was packed with people they'd helped, staff who believed in the mission, donors who made it all possible. Adrian found her in the crowd, slipping an arm around her waist. "You good?" he asked quietly. Emily looked around the room. At the woman who'd been their first Haven House resident, now living independently with a good job and her kids thriving. At the teenager they'd helped escape trafficking, now in college. At the dozens of lives they'd touched and changed and saved. "Yeah," she said, "I'm good." "Any regrets? About the career you could have had? The money? The prestige?" Emily thought about it honestly. About the hospital position she'd turned down. The traditional path she'd abandoned. About choosing trauma care and nonprofit work over comfortable success. "Not even a little bit," she said. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." Adrian kissed her temple. "Me too." Later that night, after the celebration ended and they'd said goodbye to the last guests, Emily and Adrian walked through Haven House. It had expanded over the years. The main house could sleep 8 now, with additional cottages on the property for families who needed more space. They ended up in the basement bedroom, the one Emily had helped design. She stood in the space that had once been her prison and felt only peace. "Do you ever think about that night?" Adrian asked. "About what would have happened if I hadn't answered?" "Sometimes. But mostly I think about what did happen, about how a wrong number became the most right thing in my life." "I think about it too. About how close I came to ignoring that text. It was late. I was tired. I almost just deleted it." Emily turned to face him fully. "But you didn't." "No, I didn't. Something made me read it. Made me turn the car around. Made me drive faster than I've ever driven in my life to get to someone I'd never met." "Fate?" Emily suggested, half joking. "Maybe. Or maybe just dumb luck. Either way, I'm grateful." "Me too." They stood in the quiet of Haven House, in the space they'd transformed together. Emily thought about the scared woman she'd been 10 years ago, certain she was going to die in a dark basement, about the journey from that night to this one, about everything she'd survived and everything she'd built. The truth was, trauma didn't disappear. Emily still had nightmares sometimes, still checked locks twice, still felt her heart race when she walked into enclosed spaces. The scars Mark had left, physical and emotional, would always be part of her story, but they didn't define the story anymore. They were just one chapter in a much bigger book, a book about surviving and healing and turning pain into purpose, about finding love in unexpected places and building something meaningful from broken pieces. "You ready to go home?" Adrian asked. Emily took his hand. "Yeah, let's go." As they walked out of Haven House, Emily looked back one last time. At the farmhouse that had tried to destroy her. At the safe house they'd built from those ashes. At the physical proof that sometimes the worst things led to the best things. Not because the trauma was good, it would never be good, but because surviving it had taught her what mattered, had shown her the kind of person she wanted to be, had led her to Adrian and to this work, and to a life that felt full and meaningful and right. She thought about all the people who'd text or call the Foundation's crisis line tomorrow. People in their own worst moments, their own dark basements. People who needed someone to answer, someone to show up, someone to prove they weren't alone. And she thought about how she and Adrian would be there, would answer those calls, would show up, would turn their own survival story into lifelines for others. Because that's what you did when you got a second chance. You used it. You built something that mattered. You made sure other people got their second chances, too. Emily Carter had been given a second chance by a wrong number and a man who answered, and she'd spent the last 10 years making sure that chance counted for something. As they drove through the city toward home, Adrian reached over and took her hand. 10 years together, 6 married, a lifetime still ahead. "I love you," Emily said quietly. "I love you too. Wrong number and all." Emily smiled. "Best wrong number I ever dialed. Best call I ever answered." And it was true. All of it. The fear and the pain and the healing and the love. The nonprofit they'd built and the lives they'd changed and the future they were still writing together. Sometimes the worst moments of your life led you exactly where you needed to be. Sometimes a desperate text to a wrong number saved more than just one life. It saved dozens, hundreds, everyone who walked through Haven House's doors looking for safety. Sometimes the person who showed up in your darkest hour became the person you built your brightest future with. Emily had learned that trauma didn't make you broken. It just made you different. And different could be powerful if you let it, could be the foundation for something bigger than yourself. She'd been a victim once, then a survivor. Now she was something else entirely. A doctor, a wife, a co-founder of an organization that turned pain into purpose. And above all, she was someone who answered when others called for help, just like Adrian had answered for her. The cycle continued, the healing spread, and somewhere in a city full of people fighting their own battles, someone would send a desperate text tonight, would reach out in fear and hope that someone, anyone, would answer. And because of what Emily and Adrian had built, someone would. Always. That was the real victory. Not that she'd survived, though she had. Not that she'd healed, though she was healing every day, but that she'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and transformed it into the best thing she could do for others. One wrong number had saved her life, and now she was using that life to save others. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.